This was a very beautiful holy sword. The body and handle of the sword were all made of transparent crystals. The whole sword about 1.2 meters long and was filled with glittering lights, like a natural perfect artwork, without a trace of defect. Anyone who saw this sword would be immersed in its clear and transparent light with the law of the world engraved on its handle. Every law of the world was woven from symbols that she didn't know at all. It was not any language that existed in the world. It was the truth that they used to interpret the world. Just holding the sword, she had a sense of immersion in breathing with the sword. The twin swords abandoned everything, and eventually transformed into this god weapon that only belonged to him. Probably this sword was only a prototype, far away from its complete gesture in the future. The power of the future Starwings was beyond even Yunshi's comprehension. But that didn't prevent him from loving the first god weapon he really had at the moment. The feeling of the handle was like touching the soft skin of a girl. It was not cold at all, but very warm. The sword was in his hand and in his heart. Yunshi could feel that this sword had a mysterious power, which he may not be able to release but a fraction of a percent of now. He couldn't even figure out the type of the sword. Was it a holy sword or a demon sword? From this sword, Yunshi felt the destruction of everything, but also the vitality of countless lives. It could tolerate or destroy everything. It could protect all things, it could also smash the stars. This was not a sword that could be forged by any human, nor even the gods. Only those special existences that surpass the world could forge such a sword. Amongst the three swords representing the past, the present, and the future, Yunshi caught a hint of the future. He saw the girls dancing in the stars. They, in the distant future, would become masters of the stars, and only at that time would this sword be born. That was what the stars saw, the certainty of fate. Feathered girls. Some of them had been born in this era, some were still sleeping in the cradle, but in the future they would surely step on the top of the stars, and become gods above gods, transcending all things. It was the only sword that was comparable to the two strongest swords that represented the past and the present. The red and black demon sword symbolizes the destruction and death of all orders. The unknown demon sword represented chaos, disorder, and madness. Starwings symbolized the order and rules, the trend of the future, but the wings of the stars wouldn't be bound by any force, because those figures themselves represented infinite freedom. There was only one person who could grasp the wings of infinite freedom. Starwings was the promise someone made with the girls with wings. At this moment, Yunshi didn't realize what kind of promise the Starwings represented, because it hadn't happened yet at this moment, it was just a possibility of the future. Well, let's forgive this ignorant teenager who was so attached to the great stars. Above the ruins of the palace, stepping on the transparent light halos, Yunshi had a sword in his hand. Sword, this is my sword. Yunshi pulled out the sword from the dust of the stars. At this moment, his eyes were full of glory and confidence. Unlike the three water gods' gifts, unlike the light stove, Gien Drive, from the Golden Crow Princess, this was a god weapon that only belonged to him and was forged by himself. Whether in the star trials or in the real world, it would always accompany him to fight together, grow together, and become his sword of strength. Now, let me see the power of this sword, he said, but still didn't know the nature of the sword in his hands. Yunshi took a deep breath and took a step forward. Incredibly, just holding the sword in his hand, his body had become as light as the air. The whole world had become clearer and more real than ever before. Yunshi even saw the blood-colored particles scattered on the edge of the forgotten ruins. Starwings was like Yunshi's eyes and ears, taking the place of a part of his body to observe and understand the world from a new perspective. This kind of ability apparently didn't belong to the hero rank. Only the legend rank could observe the world from this angle. The degenerated king, who was almost invincible in Yunshi's eyes just now, was full of flaws in Yunshi's eyes at this moment. Did the degenerated king weaken? No, when Yunshi chose and forged the Starwings, the king was still sacrificing his humanity, wisdom, and soul. He was still growing stronger, and the air from his body could even make the sky tremble. Yunshi had become stronger. After acquiring Starwings, it was like obtaining a pair of wings that could fly freely in the sky. The degenerated king was no longer fearful of Yun-shi, who could fly in the sky. The halos under his feet broke and Yun-shi fell like a meteor from the sky. The power of the sky-flying sword launched. Come on. It seemed that the degraded king had foreseen something and became madder. Large holes appeared one after another in his bony body, and the long shattered armor could no longer hide his terrible body. Burning. In the final stage, the firewood-named king exploded into its strongest strength. Yun-shi could have completely ignored the roar of the degenerated king. As long as he maintained his position above the sky, he would have seen the king's self-destruction. But he came. Yun-shi accepted the final challenge of the degenerated king. Sword versus sword. Transparent halos spread at Yun-shi's feet in succession, like the notes of the world. In Yun-shi's eyes, the world was so beautiful and clear. I see it, the king's unwillingness, despair, and madness. I see the constant loss of humanity from his body and the reflection of the blood-colored crescent moon that constantly engulfed him. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The familiar evil whispers resounded around Yun-shi's ear, promised him an invitation. Come on, if you are willing to give your most important things, you can get everything you want. As long as you can complete the sacrifice, then any wish can be realized. Starwings in Yun-shi's hands emitted transparent sword lights and become transparent flying birds. This is one of the characteristics of Starwings, wings. One transparent bird after another soared in the sky, then drew a mysterious trajectory and freely flew to the degenerated king. Pat, pat, pat. This was the sound of the flying birds waving their wings, clear and melodious, like the notes played by Yun-shi. The black sword swept and split, trying to strike down these beautiful birds, but these birds, as if they had their own wisdom, would automatically avoid the king's foolish attack strokes, and even change their trajectory and fly to the king from different angles. Ding, ding, ding. Like butterflies flying, like bees shuttling, transparent birds broke through the blockade of the king's black sword one after another and broke apart on his 5-meter-tall body. Only a very small part of them hit the king's black sword, turning themselves into dust-like debris. The birds that struck the king's body easily broke the king's long-broken armor, and then penetrated the king's body. Abandoned the god weapon Sacred Revenge, the degenerated king was no longer able to launch the god weapon's rebound ability and was penetrated by the special attacks released by Starwings. Yes, these special birds are the unique attacks of Starwings, the most basic way of attacking. They had basic self-will and wisdom, knowing how to avoid obstacles, and even take the initiative to sacrifice themselves to help peers break through the enemy's defense. Bang! 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 The king's 5-meter-tall body was like rotten wood, and the body that was about to burn up began to break and crush. Unfilial son. Take my last sword attack. At the last moment of his life, the degenerated king seemed to have regained a little sanity, clasping his black sword in both hands and making a deafening roar. Under the moonlight of the bloody crescent moon, the huge body with many holes once again released trembling power. It was some kind of perseverance. Even though Yun-shi didn't recognize the king's inexplicable perseverance, but also respected the will of not giving up. So Yun-shi brandished his sword. This was his response to the king's final challenge. Even if he only needed to release the special birds, he could easily tear up the king's body. He still attacked. The earth uttered an overwhelming cry, and the ruins of the whole palace were sinking, leaving only the king to unleash his last strongest strength. The vast black air spread throughout the king's body, swallowing up all the remaining Sacred Revenge. In a moment, the king's body increased by 1/3 and became a giant body about 7 meters. Kai, kai, kai. The birds that had drilled into the king's body exploded, and the king's riddled body was shaking. The king raised his black sword high in his hand and ignited his final body and soul. In the bursting flame, the king turned into a burning sword. It even suspended in the air for a short time, locking on Yun-shi's body. Undoubtedly, this was the strongest blow formed by the last persistence of the degenerated king, for which he even abandoned his human posture. Stepping on the transparent light halos, Yun-shi rushed to the king's incantation, the burning black sword without fear. Boom! The black fire sword swung down, 10 times stronger than the one that split the palace before. The light halos under Yunshi's feet were broken and his position was changed in an instant. That was the track that human sword skill is absolutely impossible to establish. That was the outline of God sword skill. In front of the sky flying sword, the rule of gravity completely failed. No matter how strong the degenerated king's sword was, it was meaningless to face he who could change his position freely. Limited to the human concept, even if the king's power had been increased 10 times, he was only debris bound to the earth, unable to pursue the shape of the sword flying in the sky. The light of the sword danced on the last remains of the king. As if the strings of the world being struck, it was Yunshi's sky flying dance, the light of sky flying which first appeared in the world of the Dragon War. Each sword hit the huge Blackfire sword accurately and correctly. Every sword ran through the last burning wreckage of the king. The overwhelmed birds burst out inside the Blackfire sword, tearing up the last resistance of the firewood. Sky flying sword vs Blackfire sword. Victory. This was the power of a god sword skill. Boom. The Blackfire sword formed by the last wreckage of the degenerated king finally fell down and turned into black ashes. The black sword, which was supposed to be the king's last weapon to fight back, didn't even burn the corner of Yunshi's clothes. This was the first time he personally felt the horror of the sky flying sword. This sword skill does not belong to the human world at all. When performing this sword skill, he even had an instinctive impulse to fly up to the high sky, overlooking the earth and all living beings. Compared to the creatures that can fly freely, human beings were as humble as ants or ground worms. Who on earth can create such a god sword skill? Unlike Yun Hai's quadrant sword, this is not an area that human beings can take foot in. His mind was filled with questions when he landed from the air, standing in front of the wreckage of the king. The king seemed to try to say something before his death. Unfortunately, he was shattered by the sky flying sword and didn't have the chance to leave a message. Sorry, I didn't want to fight you. Looking up at the bloody crescent moon in the sky, Yunshi sighed. If the king had not pushed him into despair, he would not have desperately lifted his strongest trump card. Using the sky flying sword is not without a cost. After all, his not hua. The power to liberate the power of the sky flying sword came from the battle god's seed. Otherwise, he wouldn't have a chance to use it at present. Perhaps even Cassina, who planted the seed in Yunshi's body, didn't think that Yunshi could use the battle god's seed in this way, which wasn't something that could be touched upon at his level. In this state. Probably, this state can last a quarter of an hour. This was the time from when he liberated the sky flying sword to when he killed the king. In this short moment, Yunshi pumped out the energy stored in the battle god's seed. This is the last trump card Cassina prepared for him. With it, he can even escape from the legend rank. Cassina gave it to Yunshi because she wanted to protect Yunshi. She didn't expect that Yunshi could create a miracle even she couldn't calculate. The system of the stars was so magical and incredible. What did you want to say to me at the last moment? Standing in front of the black ashes of the king's body, Yunshi sighed. This was the world of the star trial, but the degenerated king was clearly not something created from nothing, but a reflection of someone in the real world. In the end, he didn't know who the king reflected. What did he mean to kill your father and marry your mother? What the hell is this about? With such a doubt, Yunshi began to wander among the ruins of the palace. He had a strong feeling that the trial wasn't over yet. Above the sky, the crescent moon still hanging there, seemed to have some unknown existence still gazing at this place that had long been a ruin. I'm afraid. Oh, here it is. According to the approximate memory, Yunshi returned to the ruins of the palace. Numerous building debris was piled up here, showing an unnatural superposition. From a distance, it looked like a huge tombstone. Yunshi waved Starwings and instantly released dozens of transparent bird-like swords into the air. The birds dashed into the ruins of the tombstone-like palace, turning the mess into dust. Even though he had known their powers, Yunshi still felt incredulous. The strength of his own god weapon was too powerful. More importantly, these special sword airs wouldn't consume his own strength either. They were condensed by Starwings itself. Yes, this was one of the characteristics of Starwings. The special birds released by this holy sword can track enemies, dodge attacks automatically and even form tactical formations, and they require no cost. This meant that as long as Yunshi had enough time to swing his sword, he could even destroy the world by himself. He could feel that there were more terrible hidden abilities in Starwings. The wing ability was just the tip of the iceberg of Starwings. What an amazing sword. What a horrible sword. Anyone who saw Yunshi holding Starwings wouldn't believe that he was not a hero-ranked swordsman. Otherwise, how can he get the approval of such a strong sword? Door. After smashing the tombstone made up of the ruins of the palace, Yunshi saw a door hidden under the original throne, which seemed to lead to a dark place. What's behind the door? Even if I die, I will never let you touch my bride. In retrospect of the hysterical roar of the degenerated king, Yunshi seemed to understand something. Perhaps behind the door was the king's bride, his nominal mother. Hypocritical prince. Hypocritical king. Hypocritical queen. But for the inhabitants of this world, all this is true, and everyone takes everything in the world for granted. So Yunshi had to bravely step into this strange door to see his nominal mother. As for kill your father and marry your mother, of course, it is impossible, even though he has killed the king. Click. The old dark door slowly opened in front of him, as if the arrival of Yunshi had been anticipated long ago. It's just that the door leads to a place where Yunshi was shocked. It was a very different place from what he had imagined, a deep and incomparable surface of water, as if leading to another world. Why is there water behind the door? Is there something wrong? And why is it that the water doesn't fall and completely blocks the door? Yunshi reached out his hand and touched the water wave. The wave of cold swept over his whole body in an instant. It's cold, like infinite loneliness in the void. This water is not normal. Splash. The surface of the water was automatically separated in front of Yunshi, rippling with countless ripples. In this instant, the door disappeared, and what appeared in front of Yunshi was the passage to the endless waves of water. Heaven and earth were completely reversed. The ruins of the palace became the opposite, and the water became the front. What happens in the garden was like a nightmare, and here was the real garden in the nightmare world. The lake garden belongs to the Great Queen. The ground here was a transparent, huge lake. He looked around blankly and only saw himself standing on the surface of the water. Under the bloody crescent moon, in the middle of the huge lake, he could see a black figure faintly. It was a huge, ferocious black spider with outstretched limbs. Around the enormous body of the black spider was a dense flock of spiders about 1 meter tall. Under the shine of the crescent moon, it seems that both the giant spider and the spider flock are sleeping. On the body of the giant spider, a doll-like, black-haired girl was sleeping. Her long black hair almost fell to the sole of her feet. She was wearing a black robe, leaning against the throne with closed eyes, and her tiny, shining fingers crossed together, as if praying for something and listening to something. Apparently, she was sleeping on the horrible spider's body, but gave Yunshi a feeling of wanting to touch her. Under the bloody crescent moon, her beauty was fantastic and a little unreal, more like a spirit falling silently from heaven into the world. The little white face revealed a touch of ruddiness, the pointed chin even more showed her vitality. What an amazingly inhuman beauty! He vaguely understood why the degenerated king would go mad for his bride. But isn't the bride a little too young? In any case, she looks only about 11 or 12 years old. It's the same age as Miu Miu. Her chest does seem a little bigger than Miu Miu's. Yunshi's sight moved to the slightly raised part of the black robe. The curvature of the lovely buds was beautiful, which was already above the standard of the girls of the Starwing Knights. Pafu. 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 Suddenly, Pafu got excited. It jumped out of Yunshi's clothes and ran to the spider flock in a fast jump. Hey! Don't kill yourself, those spiders are dangerous monsters. Yunshi watched Pafu, who was in a brave charge, shook his head, and followed it. Although he didn't know how strong these spiders were, they gave Yunshi a creepy and dangerous feeling. The king he just killed was like a harmless rabbit compared to them. The amount of blood moonlight in their bodies was far higher than that of the king. It's said that in the world of spiders, female spiders are stronger. The queen of the spiders is indeed stronger than the king. Her! With the arrival of Pafu and Yunshi's footsteps, it seemed that the sleeping girl was awakened. She opened her eyes slightly, as if she was still immersed in the sweet dream. Who? The girl blinked as she watched Yunshi come to her. This was different from what he imagined. Isn't the queen the hidden boss of this star trial? Looking at the giant monster and the dense spiders, Yunshi was ready to die hundreds of times before he could clean this area. How does it look different from his imagination? To marry such a young bride? The king is a real pervert. Dream. It's been a long time since I had a dream. The girl stood up and stretched, looking at Yunshi with innocent eyes. Do you want to touch my darkness? The soft voice, the pitiful and lovely face. Well, Yunshi felt that he could forgive the king. Not everyone could resist such a temptation. Your darkness? What is that? It's the crescent moon tonight. You who can see the moon, you who are in the dream, poor man, this is the will of the ancient gods. May you have peace, and let the prisoner of this dream have a happy awakening. I hope that one day what happened here will become a beautiful and vague memory. Prince, what are you looking forward to? Even in such a dark night, you can still see the moonlight. Have you decided yet? Is it the age of darkness or the age of fire? The black-haired girl, the queen of spiders, gazed at Yunshi and waited for his choice. Sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. Yunshi thought that he was looking for the wrong person. Is this really the king's bride, the queen of this kingdom? He had a feeling that if he promised her, everything would soon embark on a different road of fate. Tonight, the moon is beautiful. Do you want to get my blessing? The queen stroked the fluff of the giant spider under her feet. Her bare white feet gently stepped on Pafu, who was rolling, and her eyes were gentle and peaceful. The red crescent moon shone on her face, with a light crystal color. The spiders around seemed to get some signals, and began to be active. Danger, danger, danger. See the spiders around her. Yunshi's whole body was as cold as being dropped into an ice cave. I see the runes behind these spiders. Those are the weapons that let him die in the forgotten ruins. There is no mistake about it. The so-called bride of the king, the queen of the kingdom, is actually the queen in the forgotten ruins. How long has the king kept this secret? However, it seems that the queen is in a good mood now. At least she didn't kill him like she killed him in the forgotten ruins. Your Majesty, how did you marry her? This is the Queen of Assyria. Is it because the king came into contact with the indescribable terror in the forgotten ruins that led to his degeneration? Are you not going to touch my darkness? The queen smiled, picked up Pafu, who was being comfortably trodden on with Pafu. Pafu sounds. Yunshi tried his best not to agree with it. Strange, too strange. This lake, these spiders, and the Queen of Assyria were very strange. The master of the forgotten ruins, the last level master of the dragon's nest, unexpectedly lives in the underground of the king's city. What untold relationship does the royal family have with the Queen of Assyria? My win rate is 0. Big drops of sweat fell from his forehead. If these spiders are the prototype of those weapons that killed him before, then the number of spiders dominated by this huge spider is more than 3,000. Even with Starwings, he wasn't matched for the mysterious Queen of Assyria's power, let alone that he had used up the energy in the battle god's seed. Prince, you must inherit history. If you don't want this country destroyed, marry me. At least let me have a good dream. The queen held Pafu and walked gently to him, stretching out her crystal white, soft feet. As in the past, answer me, the knight who was loyal to me. Be loyal to me again. Yunshi's mind was a mess. Is this the truth of the kingdom? It turns out that the royal family of this kingdom was not guarding the forgotten ruins, but the Queen of Assyria. The kingdom of Assyria has never disappeared, but has been inherited in this way. Yes or no? He had fallen into a huge contradiction. If he doesn't agree with it, this country may be destroyed by the queen overnight. There was no doubt that the current Queen of Assyria had this ability. The spiders around her could kill all the people in the kingdom overnight, including the girls of the Starwing Knights. Okay, now he knew the difficulty of being the king. He had to marry the queen. However, it seemed that his nominal father really fell in love with the Queen of Assyria in the end, and even touched the dark side of the queen, which made him go mad. She didn't want to degenerate like the degenerated king, so he wouldn't try to touch the queen's darkness. "Swear to me, prince, then you will be my king. The world is still so beautiful." The queen of Assyria put her little foot in his hand. "Every part of your body will be the queen's thing. Even if you die, you can't get rid of the queen's curse. If you want to touch the dark side of the queen, then listen to the sound of the blood moon. Only nightmares are eternal. Turn yourself into firewood and burn it." This foot is so soft. She felt the warm touch of the fragrant soft feet on his hands. It was not the feeling of the dead, but it was not the bone structure that humans should have neither. The queen of Assyria was like an unreal dream in the moonlight. Her body was so light that he couldn't believe his eyes. "Pafu." Pafu suddenly jumped off the queen's shoulder, which made her lose her balance easily. "Ah!" The queen's little body suddenly fell down into his arms. "She's so light. Can human beings be so light?" Holding the queen of Assyria, he felt like he was holding a soft and fragrant doll, which should not be the weight of a girl. It was impossible for human beings to have such wonderful skin. The queen's body was just like that made by moonlight. Just by touching it, he felt that it was the collection of all the beauty in the world. "Your Majesty, I misunderstood you. It's understandable why you had degenerated." She felt that he was about to degenerate in the moonlight, and never let go of the queen's light, warm, and fragrant body. "No, it's not a thing a gentleman should do." She shook his head and carefully put the queen down, who looked surprised. She didn't believe that she would be held by others. What a mistake. The little face of the queen had a faint blush. For thousands of years, no one had touched her body. This dream is a little strange. It seems that she herself had also become strange. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Under the bloody moonlight, the strange whispers echoed in the lake again. "I know, it's just a dream, sweet and memorable. At least, please give me the right to dream." With a trace of lingering sadness, the queen's eyes blinked. Bang! In a flash, his heart began to beat faster. "No way. That expression. It's really foul." After the sad murmur, the queen's expression suddenly changed, full of pure curiosity. The extremely strong contrast caught she off guard. There was a kind of emotion called irresistible. There was an impulse called sudden. Before entering the gate, he reminded himself countless times. "What I will encounter is the enemy. I will never commit the mistake of killing my father and marrying my mother. What a joke. I'm not the main character of a third-rate drama. I came to the world of Dragon War to challenge the invincible dragon, not to marry some inexplicable queen, and really to be the king of this kingdom." Even though he was hostile to the degenerated king and forced to battle, he never thought such a thing would come true in his mind. Only fighting was the main theme of the Star Trials. However, now holding the queen in his arms, the queen's little feet were gently shaking in his left hand and her soft black long hair was scattered on his right hand, which smelled good. This temptation was too strong. In the face of the doll-like queen, she couldn't say no at all. "The kings of this kingdom, were you unable to resist such a temptation, so you finally touched the dark side of the queen?" For the first time in 1,000 years, the queen of Assyria was in contact with another human's skin. She showed a dazed expression on her face. After the destruction of the kingdom of Assyria and the night of blood moon, the king who guarded the forgotten ruins could be said to be the queen's knight, continuing to perform the oath of their ancestors, swearing allegiance to the queen of Assyria generation after generation. Watching over the forgotten ruins was the mission of this last kingdom of mankind. Because of this, the existence of the queen of Assyria was a semi-open secret in the royal family. Only the best and most powerful members of the royal family were eligible to be elected princes. When the king could no longer fulfill his duties as a knight, the prince would inherit the mission of the royal family, come to this lake, and swear allegiance to the queen of Assyria sleeping on the throne of spiders. For the queen of Assyria, that was the last remaining goodness after becoming non-human. The red crescent in the lake reflected the queen's last human nature. The doll-like girl figure was the queen's best dream. When the queen was still 12 years old, she was carefree and blessed by everyone. Everyone was looking forward to her, because she had the most excellent bloodline of all queens. and would become the greatest Millennium Queen. As early as the age of 12, there were nobles proposing to the young queen, which also made the queen full of longing for marriage. The other half of her future must be perfect and could accompany the queen for thousands of years. She kept dreaming about what her lover would look like. A prince on a white horse, or a hero who could slay dragons. The 12-year-old queen of Assyria had a magnificent future. Not only she, but everyone believed that the queen would make Assyria prosperous and immortal for thousands of years. It was predicted that the queen's lover would be the best knight. Others imagined that the queen's lover would be as perfect as the queen. The 12-year-old queen described the outline of her future with such a simple fantasy. As for what happened later, it belongs to the tragedy of the immortal Millennium Queen. The queen who appeared in the underground lake of the kingdom had no such trouble. She was like a princess sleeping in a dream, and her time was forever frozen at the age of 12. For the evil queen, this was the last dream and the reason why the world was not yet destroyed. In order to protect the dream of the queen and the hope of the world, the kings of the kingdom come here from generation to generation to swear to the young queen under the bloody crescent moon. They would continue to protect the queen's kingdom, and their loyalty would not change for thousands of years. The queen who guarded the kingdom had never changed. There was only one person from beginning to end. All the so-called kings were knights of the queen. This was the oath that had lasted for thousands of years, and it was also a curse. None of the kings who guarded the kingdom had a good end. All of them touched the dark side of the great queen and degenerated in the bloody moonlight. Even so, the guardians, who were called kings, continued their mission from generation to generation, and they couldn't even let go of this dedication until they died. But none of them had really touched the queen. Even though she was young and knew she was dreaming, the queen of Assyria was still the most powerful queen with thousands of years of magic power. The spiders would tear any living creature who dared to get close to the queen to pieces. The huge black spider was a monster from another time and space. Its existence itself was the strongest protection. The kings of the kingdom, the knights of the queen, could only kneel in front of the queen's skirt and swear allegiance to the great Millennium Queen. The only way for the kings could do was to come to the edge of the lake, staying far away from the spiders, watching the queen's sleeping face. No one could break through the spider swarm like Yun Shi. He didn't arouse the hostility of the spiders even after directly touching the queen's body. For the queen, the kings were just a kind of sacrifice, which was her last thought of the world and the kingdom she was guarding. Every time she woke up, she would find that there were more spiders around her, and there would be a new knight who vowed to be loyal to her. Tonight, there was a brand new face in the spiders. "Will you marry me?" The 12-year-old queen smiled like a 12-year-old girl who was playing the game playhouse with a doll in the garden. "Yes." "Okay, I disappointed you. I can't refuse her wish." Yun Shi had to admit that he was getting further and further away from being a gentleman. At least, in the small town, he never wanted to marry an underage girl. Although it was a forced choice, maybe he would be killed by the spiders if he refused, but he still felt that he had lost something very important. Why? He had married 1,000,000 brides, but in the face of the proposal of the young queen of Assyria, his psychological defense was simply vulnerable. No matter how many reasons he had, it couldn't be covered up as a crime. Killing the father and marrying the mother, is this the original sin of guarding the royal family? Alas, I miss those star trials, when I could simply solve the problem by killing monsters all the way. The epic task of marrying the queen was too difficult. Then, marry me. The 12-year-old queen of Assyria was straight. At this age, she didn't know how to hide her intention like an adult. The love in the eyes of a girl of this age was just like a fairy tale. The prince would surely fall in love with the princess, and the two would have a happy ending. The tragedy of the Millennium Queen does not exist here. Here was the paradise where time freezes forever at the age of 12, just like a heaven-like sweet dream. Okay. So far, he had no choice. Anyway, to marry a bride couldn't be more difficult than to marry 1,000,000 brides, right? Well, at least this time, this is a real star trial, right? No one would remember me after they woke up, right? Just regard it like the game-playing house. Well, I'll wait for you. The queen of Assyria grabbed Pafu in her hands and smiled at Yun Shi, Go and announce that the wedding is about to begin. Do you want me to do that? He looked at the queen who was kneading Pafu. This was different from what she said. A wedding is a must. The eyes of the young queen of Assyria were full of longing. Every wedding is a very happy day for the queen of Assyria, who was trapped in the underground lake. This was also a crucial ritual for the whole kingdom. In the city, the bell tolled 13 times in a row, echoing in succession. It was the bell that proclaimed the death of the king. All the people of the kingdom were aware of the significance of the 13 bells. People in the city first heard the bell and heard the news. The bells were delivered one by one according to the special arrangement. Soon people living in other cities also knew the news. At sunset, even the people at the most remote villages heard the 13 bells in their villages. In this regard, people had already had a psychological preparation. In the capital city, people who just met the attack of the dragon in the daytime gathered in the tavern and talked loudly about the coming ceremony. Your Majesty has passed away. I'm not surprised, he has been seriously ill for a long time. It's time for the prince to inherit the throne. The prince is very excellent. Even the desert dragon was defeated by him. He's not a prince now. According to the law, when His Majesty dies, His Highness will automatically inherit the throne. Let's drink to the new king, to the mysterious queen who has been replaced again. In countless clinking cups, people began to look forward to the coming ceremony. It was an inevitable ceremony for every king of the kingdom to ascend the throne. The mysterious bride in the black robe would appear in the ceremony called Moonlight sacrifice. Every king would marry such a mysterious queen, but no one had ever really seen the true face of these mysterious queens. It was said that this was the agreement between the royal family and a mysterious race, symbolizing a sacred oath. Every king would marry such a bride, but no one had seen the mysterious bride outside the Moonlight sacrifice. All the descendants of the kings were born from the concubines or even lovers. The mysterious queens never gave birth to the descendants of the royal family, and even where they lived was the secret of the royal family. All the kings were powerful warriors worthy of the kingdom's pride. The prince of this generation was also known as the most talented swordsman of the kingdom. His wedding ceremony, the Moonlight sacrifice, would undoubtedly be a grand event for the whole kingdom. When the old king died and the new king ascended, as long as people had a little identity and financial resources, they would come from all sides of the kingdom to witness this historic moment. The last king was praised as a knight close to perfection. During his term of office, he worked very hard. Until he fell ill, he was a hard-working and diligent king, deeply loved by the people. In order to remember this great king and celebrate the birth of a new king, the whole kingdom had been in a busy state since the bell rang. Prince, you made a choice. It's the right choice, the choice of destiny. In front of Yun Shi, Robin, who dressed in royal augur robe, looked at him with complicated eyes. As you said, I can't escape, he sighed. He had no choice, because he didn't even have the right to refuse. If he didn't want those horrible spiders running out of the underground lake, he had to marry the Queen of Assyria. That was to say, there were only two options from the beginning. Marry the Queen of Assyria and save the kingdom. Escape from the kingdom and watch the kingdom being destroyed. It was really hard to choose one from the other. In fact, there was no choice at all. This choice was so difficult that he had to think if there was something wrong with his life, and found out that Robin seemed to have seen through everything. Then, according to the ancient ceremony, Prince, you have to prepare the gift of marrying the queen. He didn't know if it was his imagination, but he felt that Robin's voice was extremely sharp today, as if she were very dissatisfied. Didn't you tell me that only killing the father and marrying the mother can ascend the throne of this kingdom and gather all forces to fight against the terror dragon? Why now you look at me with such contempt? The next most important thing is the wedding ceremony. Robin looked at Yun Shi seriously, with a look of contempt and pity. Wedding, is there anything to pay special attention to? Yun Shi's impression of a wedding was that two people work hand in hand, vow in front of the church or parents, exchange rings, and then the ceremony is done. Well, is it to discuss the making method of the wedding cake? He had rich experience in this. As a hero-ranked baker, he was a little confident in his ability to design cakes. Should I design a super large cake with a 9-story tower structure? The wedding ceremony with the Queen is special. Prince, you have to make a puppet by yourself. Robin looked at Yun-shi with some doubts and said what every king must do according to the tradition. Puppet? Yun-shi asked confused and looked at Robin. The Queen can't leave the underground lake, so a puppet must be made to attend the wedding ceremony. In the palace, there is a special room for kings to make puppets. Prince, since you are going to marry that queen, you will naturally make a corresponding puppet. As the royal augur, Robin informed him of the very important information. I see. Yun-shi finally understood why the forbidden queen of Assyria could appear in public to marry the kings. It turns out that she was using puppets. So, what I have to do is to make a puppet for her according to the rules. Yes, according to the tradition, the better the puppet you make, the more you will win the favor of that queen. This is a top priority of our kingdom, Robin said very seriously. The young queen, who would only appear under the red crescent moon, couldn't come to the sun with her true body. If her true body appeared, this kingdom would be destroyed just like the destruction of the ancient kingdom of Assyria. The weddings of the kings and the queen of Assyria were actually the weddings of the kings and the puppets made by kings. This secret was known only to the kings and the royal augurs who presided over the queen's wedding. No one would think that the mysterious bride married to the kings was not human at all. For the queen of Assyria, who couldn't leave the underground lake, the wedding had been a long history of thousands of years. It was a rare festival for the queen to go out to see the world and feel the sunshine, even though she was in the form of filling in the bodies of the puppets. Because the puppets made by kings were different, mainly because of the technical problems, the mysterious brides in people's eyes were not the same person. This time, Yun-shi needed to help the queen of Assyria make a wedding puppet just like what all the previous kings had done. Well, I see. Yun-shi thought that since the kings before had all completed this task, it should not be difficult to make a puppet. He also wondered if all the kings before had such artistic talent to make people in the kingdom believe that the puppets were the real bride. This question was not completely solved until he was led by Robin to the so-called puppet chamber. Are these the brides of the king? Yun-shi was stunned to see a large number of strange puppets. Yes, this is the work of kings. Robin shrugged. When she first saw these puppets, she had the same expression as Yun-shi. They are too ugly. Most of the king's handicrafts looked like the wooden man used as targets when knights practiced their sword skills. The size of the fingers was not right, the proportion of the limbs was distorted, and even the 5 features on the head were in a mess. They were more like a terror monster used to scare children than puppets. What's more, these puppets were also inlaid with precious gems. This was simply wasting materials. There were only a few puppets that were not that bad. That meant, the ones with no mistakes in their facial features and had complete body structure. These were just apprentice-level roughworks, which could already be said to be unique and transcendent in this puppet room. Without exception, all the puppets showed a consistent characteristic. They all look like the wooden man for the knights to practice with. After all, kings are also knights, none of them are artists. Robin shrugged. How does this kind of puppet make people think they will be humans? As long as he imagined that the kings were holding these puppets in their arms and vowing to marry them, he felt creepy. It seems that when the queen comes, these puppets will change automatically, at least they will look more like human beings, Robin said in an unsure tone. The scam lasted for thousands of years and hadn't been discovered by anyone. There must be a reason. Perhaps, the power of that Assyrian queen had reached a level that could distort reality. At least, no one had ever doubted whether the queen of Assyria, who came to the wedding as a puppet, was human. Well, I see. Yun-shi rubbed his temples and sighed for the low artistic imagination of kings. Your Majesty, in addition to practicing knights' fighting skills, you should also improve your artistic accomplishment. Can't you replace it with a better puppet? He thought that it was too sad to marry such ragged puppets. No, only the puppets made by the kings can be possessed by the queen. This is the mission of every king. Robin replied very positively. Well, I can only make a new one myself. Yes. Prince, please make a good wedding puppet. I am responsible for everything else. After delivering the important task of saving the world to Yunxi, Robin left the room, leaving him alone. Looking at the many nightmarish puppets in this room, Yunxi couldn't help but sigh. He had been greatly dissatisfied with the poor workmanship of the kings. I've never seen such ugly puppets. What kind of mood do you need to take this as a substitute for the Queen of Assyria to get married? It's also unnecessary to put precious stones on these ugly puppets. There should be a degree of luxury and waste. This room should be called the Puppet Cemetery. He himself was not a professional craftsman, but as a baker, he occasionally made birthday cakes. He was absolutely confident that he was 1,000 times more talented than all the kings. Just staying in this room full of abandoned puppets, he would feel a great pressure. If people knew that these abandoned puppets were actually the brides of the kings, they would be scared to death. At least, I should restore the real appearance of the queen. Recalling the beauty of the young queen of Assyria, Yunxi couldn't stand the poor craftsmanship of the kings. Walking to the long table, he suddenly found a diary that seemed to have existed for many years. On the cover of the diary, there was a disorderly inscription, the notes of making puppets, which seemed to tell later people that they must look at this diary before making puppets. On the first page, Yunxi saw the words left by the knight who originally wrote this note. That was, the ancestor who guarded the kingdom, the note of the founding king who was once the real subordinate of the queen. Unbelievable, unbelievable, unbelievable. The words showed the great joy of the master of the note. The queen is back. She is still so beautiful, so outstanding, as time and curse do not leave any traces on her. As a knight who once swore allegiance to the great queen, I don't deserve to have the name of knight anymore. I'm just a bereaved dog who escaped to the border. Assyria is doomed to be destroyed, which is the inevitable price of our betrayal of the queen. How stupid, we mortals. The queen seems to forget what happened on the night of the blood moon. What's going on? Marriage, engagement. Is there any chance for a fool like me to repay my mistakes? There is still hope. My descendants, with the greatest respect, kneel at the feet of the queen. Only by carrying out this pledge can the world be saved and make up for the mistakes made by we foolish ancestors. The ancient writing stops abruptly. It could be seen that the knight, who was known as the greatest founding king, was sincerely loyal to the Queen of Assyria. But why did such a loyal knight betray the queen? This question was always in Yunxi's mind. Next, after the note of the ancestor, it was the records of the kings who made puppets in this room. Today, I know the biggest secret of the kingdom. I saw her. How beautiful, how bright, just like the goddess of the moon. I am willing to give her all I have. I thank my father for choosing me as the prince to carry on the mission of the royal family. In the name of the knights, I swear to the great queen to protect her majesty even at the expense of my life. This was the diary of the second king. Impossible. Why? Why is it me? I am not the strongest knight in this generation. Why was I chosen to be the prince and inherit the throne? The queen, she's so beautiful. Is she a fallen spirit? I seem to know why I was chosen. It's ironic. May the great queen rest in peace tonight, and I will continue to fulfill the royal mission and become the queen's knight. The king of the third generation seemed to perceive something, and the writing style began to become melancholy. My father died early. No, it shouldn't have been so fast. The reason, now I seem to understand, also know what I should do. For the sake of the great queen, we will be the firewood to light the fire of hope and let this era continue. I am willing to undertake such a mission, because I am hopelessly fond of Her Majesty. Ancestors, you must be like this. Even if you know the final fate, you will not give up this mission. My children who see this in the future, I hope the last flame will never go out. From the fourth generation, something dark began to emerge, and Yunxi's expression became serious. The next 10 generations of kings seemed to understand what firewood meant, which is the inevitable outcome of the contract with the Queen of Assyria. They were like the degenerated king Yunxi saw. They all touched the dark side of the Queen of Assyria without exception. The bloody crescent moon, which hung high above the underground lake, devoured the knights one by one. Finally, the last note was from the degenerated king defeated by Yunxi. I will not succumb to this fate. Even if I die, I will cry out in the coffin. Her Majesty is mine. I know it's not right, but I just can't help being jealous and crazy, and don't want to let go. My child, if you want to inherit the fate of Firewood, although I still don't know who you will be, you have to accept my judgment. Well, Yunshi now knew that when the degenerated king made the puppet, he already had a sign of insanity. You are all stupid knights. Looking at this diary, he felt as if he was watching the knights swear allegiance to the Queen of Assyria, then made puppets in this room with their own poor hands, and then married the puppets. They may be stupid, but they are absolutely loyal. They are real knights. If you do it, you will do your best once you start working. This was Yunshi's little obsessive-compulsive disorder. It was a kind of innate patience. He didn't have the talent of Hua Hua, so he spent 10 times or even more to do his best, step by step. Although he had never made a puppet before, the experience of making cakes would help at this time. First, it was about deciding the material. Well, the materials here are really advanced. He walked to the corner of the puppet room, where there were all kinds of materials. Most of them were all kinds of precious wood, which was also the most popular puppet material used by the previous kings. All the materials were well preserved in the magic shield, maintaining the perfect texture, and were absolutely the best materials of the highest level. However, compared with the finished products on the other side, the irredeemable craftsmanship of the kings really spoiled these precious materials. They could even carve the bright moonlight branches with dense potholes. How terrible the king's craftsmanship was! In addition to all kinds of wood, the rest was colorful gemstones. It seemed to be the common skill of all kings to decorate their puppets with beautiful gems. Deep dark obsidian, lively celestite, dazzling spinel, brilliant sapphire, hot ruby. Gems from all over the world had been classified and piled up together. Even the dragons would be jealous if they saw these gems. The kings who lived frugally and simply seemed to put all their wealth in this small puppet room. Yunshi's fingertips slide over various kinds of colorful gemstones and the corners of his mouth slightly raised. I have an inspiration. With these gems, I may be able to make a very beautiful puppet. It's unbelievable. It'll be the first time for me to make a puppet, but after touching these materials, there is a steady stream of inspiration in my mind. Pafu, Pafu, Pafu. The mellow green slime rolled in and out of the gem pile. From time to time, it rolled up one sparkling gem after another and made a joyful and inexplicable cry. Well, Pafu can also be used. Yunshi looked at the bouncing Pafu thoughtfully, with a general outline of the puppet he was going to make in mind. It was the figure of the young and beautiful queen. A moment later, Pafu was placed in the center of the long table. I remember that slimes can change their shapes at ease. He looked at Pafu, who was confused about why it was placed here. Pafu? Pafu skillfully turned into his fondness, looking like the bud of girls. Cough, cough, not this. Yunshi blushed. Pafu? Pafu transformed into the shape of the bracelet, just like that one in the water god's world. It's not that either. He shook his head and told Pafu the outline he wanted. It's the figure of the queen. Can you do it? Pafu? Pafu twisted its round body and began to transform into the figure he wanted. However, it was a little too difficult for Pafu, which seemed not so intelligent. The posture it changed into was far from the image of the queen in his mind. It could only be said that there was roughly the outline of a human girl, but no matter, the hair or fingers were stuck together. It was only the slightly raised chest that restored the shape of the queen. It seemed that this was one of Pafu's natural talents. Fortunately, Yunshi had been prepared for this. Just like the old saying goes, Rome can't be built in a day. Making a beautiful puppet couldn't be done overnight. As the preview before the real hands-on, Pafu was the best material for the task. Anyway, it wouldn't die because of this. Moreover, even the clumsy figure of the girl Pafu transformed into was much more beautiful than the best works of the kings. Your Majesties, to what extent is your sense of art lacking? Holding out his hand, he recalled the lonely queen of Assyria in his eyes under the moonlight, and started the homework named Pinching Pafu. The slime's features had been well used by Yunshi. The image of the queen, The figure bathed in the moonlight appeared in front of him through his hands and through Pafu's translucent green body. Letting Yoon she knead and pinch, Pafu made a happy and comfortable sounds, and enjoyed the stimulation of his hands. Pafu, Pafu, Pafu. The lovely voice echoed in the puppet, so beautiful, so happy. Yoon she was humming a song that only he could hear clearly, while shaping the appearance of the puppet girl he would marry. If the dream can come true, I want to come to you, hold your hand and kiss your lips. With my constant caressing, your body is shaking and your long legs are combined because of tension. I stretched out my hand and took off all the boots and socks from your beautiful feet. In the moonlight, your feet exude a white texture like white jade and cheese. On your beautiful, silver moon-like face, your lips are biting gently, your eyes are closed shyly, and your groans are emotional. Your long hair is scattered on your shoulder, giving out the most unique beauty in the world. You look at me with uneasy eyes, just like the goddess under the white moon. I admire your feet, your eyes, your whispers as I look at the most beautiful art in the world. In my eyes, there is nothing more beautiful than you in the universe. You are the light of my life, the fire of my desire. Like the moon surrounded by stars, you are so beautiful and so bright. Tonight, may the moonlight bless you, Your Majesty. When Yoon she was using Pafu to do the test, the Queen of Assyria opened her eyes in the underground lake. Strange feelings invaded her body and mind, as if her body no longer belonged to herself, confusing and disturbing the young queen. She turned away her head and her little face turned ruddy little by little. Even though she tried to suppress her voice, she could not help making a lovely low sounds. Her hands tightly grasped her skirt, and her eyes were dazed. The snow-white feet under the skirt seemed to be licked by something, which made the young body of the queen tremble. The feeling started from the round arch of the foot, extended from the toes to the instep along the white skin, and then from the instep to the calves. There was no one, but the queen's skirt was removed, and her white and fragrant legs could clearly feel the feeling of being touched and kissed. Ah! Woo! Sweet gasps echoed in the silent underground lake, adding a special color to the silent world. Woo! The Queen of Assyria closed her eyes, and suddenly had an unexpected fantasy. It was the dream of her being with the prince whom she had just met in the moonlight. In the fantasy, she was held in the arms of her prince. Her small body standing on his knee, looking at his face. She raised her reddish face and looked at the prince. She snuggled up in his arms under the prince's careful and gentle touch. She closed her eyes quietly and her soft lips trembled, waiting for something. The prince raised her little face and kissed her lips tenderly. His tongue gently pushed open her lips, while tasting the soft lips, while going deep into her mouth. And she stretched out her tongue tremblingly, and entwined with his tongue. Warm fragrant tongue made her consciousness become confused and fascinated, making her involuntarily fall into the taboo she shouldn't touch. Her body was slightly stiff, and her joints were stiff like a puppet. She looked at him uneasily. He smiled and touched her skin gently as touching the moonlight. Her cherry-like lips gave out wonderful gasps, the skin stained with some sweat showed beautiful white, and the petite body trembled because of overstraining. What a beautiful and attractive body, pearl-like sweat drops. White skin dyed with pink. No way, not there. The queen's body temperature was rising rapidly. Even though her snow-white feet completely shrunk into the skirt, it couldn't let that kind of blazing feeling fade. Obviously, there was no one there, but she had the feeling of being watched, occupied and ravaged by someone with burning eyes. Why am I becoming like this? Why do I have this feeling? The queen looked at her disobedient feet with aggrieved eyes, and waves of excitement came from there, making her body become limp and lazy. The strange feelings came one after another, which made the queen unable to distinguish between her own fantasies and her own reality. Under the bloody crescent moon, the breathing and whimpering of the young queen mixed into an incredible melody. All the spiders around were motionless, as if they could not hear the queen's voice at all. With more stimulation and impulse, the young queen of Assyria couldn't help but raise her head. Her delicate body was shaking, convulsing, and her beautiful voice was gradually becoming high, playing the highest wave of music. Whoa! Ah ah ah! Like the voice of weeping, with the notes of breathing and fragrance interlacing together, the white skin dispersed a forbidden charm. It was the blazing melody played by the breath of a young girl, the excitement of the queen who had been lonely for thousands of years had never received in her life, and it was the sweet song of a young girl quietly played in the silent underground. Among the puppets, Yunshi's hands tightly pressed the emerald slime. Pafu, don't move. Pafu. Pafu. Almost completely turned into the shape of the young queen, Pafu whined in the puppet room together with the queen in the underground lake. Yunshi took Pafu as the perfect material and almost exactly reproduced the queen's lovely posture. Apart from its transparent green body, Pafu was the epitome of the queen, just a naked version. In this process, Pafu struggled. Unfortunately, Pafu's strength was too low, which made it effortless for Yunshi to suppress. Well, that's probably how it feels. Not only the appearance, Yunshi perfectly modeled the touch of the skin of the queen. Pafu is useful. The queen's soft and smooth body has appeared precisely. It's wonderful. He has touched the snow-white feet with his hands more than once, which were smooth, fragrant, soft, and wonderful. The scallop-like, cute white toes were the focus of his attention. Even Yunshi himself felt perfect when he touched it, especially the reaction of being touched was just like a real person. Yunshi carefully examined every corner of Pafu's green, transparent body, which had become the queen of Assyria's body. From fingernails to armpits, toes to legs, all parts are confirmed with both hands. He can't help admiring. Pafu's transformation ability is really great. If it wasn't for the limited size of Pafu, it would really be the same size as the Queen of Assyria. It would be great if it could. Well, I can't ask too much. Pafu is great. Shaking his head, Yunshi dispelled some evil ideas from his mind. He looked at Pafu's naked and beautiful posture with pure artistic eyes. Art, this is art. If I can't reproduce such art, it's really a waste. If I do it, I must do the best I can, even if I would spend 10 times more time than others. This is the only way the stupid Yunshi could choose. Pafu, don't move. With the same energy as the time when he designed the wedding cake, Yunshi began to draw a sketch of the puppet girl to be made according to Pafu. He must do his best, and even the length of a finger can't be wrong. He pulled up Pafu's little hand, one finger after another, and even reached over to lick it a little. Well, the taste of Pafu was sweet, and even this perfectly restored the taste of the queen. Even this kind of detail had been restored so perfectly. Pafu is so wonderful. This was not the first time Yunshi had made such an exclamation. Pafu. Being tasted by Yunshi, Pafu's petite body trembled gently. The size of the chest was really interesting. He gently pressed the pair of soft and elastic little white rabbits. Pafu. Pafu's transparent little face turned red. The face of the queen, who was far away in the underground lake, was even more embarrassed. She held her chest with both hands, and was about to cry. At the end of the measurement, Yunshi gently pulled off Pafu's legs and put her feet in an attractive posture. The snow-white feet were not only the end of Yunshi's measurement, but also a core part of making the puppet. Lovely puppets must have lovely feet, which was the key to supporting the weight of the whole body. He must be careful at this point. For this reason, he carefully observed and recorded the queen's feet. Round and beautiful white toes, well-balanced and smooth calves, everything was the same with Yunshi's impression. The delicate skin was like pearl powder, which was extremely smooth. No matter whether it was kneading or pinching, the hand feel was almost perfect. Again, on the throne of the giant stupid spider, the queen held her feet. From the sole of her feet to the tip of her toes, all in lovely pink. This dream was so strange. Okay, that's all. The first step of making the puppet was finally done. Pafu looked at its master with tears in its eyes. Pafu, thank you. You were working hard. After sketching, Yunshi touched Pafu's head, and Pafu's fragrance was still on his fingertips. Pafu. Pafu bit Yunshi's fingertips and looked very dissatisfied. Of course, Pafu's whole body was soft. Even if it was biting, it was also soft, without any strength. I'll take you out to hunt 300 slimes after the work is finished. She also felt strange. Why Pafu like to eat all kinds of slims? Isn't it a slime too? Pafu. After hearing She's promise, Pafu finally released its mouth from his fingertips. The next question is what kind of main material to use to make the puppet. She looked at all kinds of materials in the room and was lost in thought. No matter what kind of art the kings had, the materials here were really top-notch. No matter what kind of puppet he wanted to make, he could find the right materials. The wood with fragrance could make a puppet suitable for long-term worship. With the passage of time, the puppet would emit a better smell, which was very suitable for accompanying children. The puppet made of moonlight branches would have particularly white skin, and would emit light under the moonlight. The puppet made of dragon blood tree had a very high hardness. It was the most suitable for making a bow shooting target. The puppets made of black wood would have a special power of curse. Some kings chose this wood for their puppets. It seemed that it could let them get closer to the queen's dark side. The main material can be the moonlight branch. Compared with other materials, there was nothing more suitable as the main material than the moonlight branch. However, the processing of this material was very difficult. Only one of the kings chose this material. As a result, the final puppet he made was too ugly. The body of the puppet carved by the king was full of potholes. The materials that should have reflected the delicacy of the puppet's skin looked almost the same as the chew of pigs. And pearl powder. I need pearl powder. After selecting the main materials, She needed to decide the auxiliary materials. Including nails, toenails, and hair, he needed to consider a lot of things. She had a problem. Almost all the main materials for making the puppet girl had been selected. Eyes, nails, clothes, even with a small moonlight branch, he roughly tried to carve a bald head. The bald head was round, with only 2 eyes and 1 mouth, but it naturally exudes a strong breath, even if those eyes were funny. The only remaining problem was the puppet's hair. She searched all over the puppet room, and didn't find the right hair material. Your Majesty, can you pay more attention to collecting hair materials? These are all the wrong materials. Flax. Can the hair of the Queen of Assyria be flax? Transparent silk thread. Do you want to use this to fish? Long blonde hair. Which noble lady did you get it from? No. None of them are suitable. After searching the puppet room, he was shocked to find that there was nothing suitable for making the hair of the Queen's puppet. How can I do this? If I can't reproduce the beautiful long hair, my bride will be bald. How can a perfect puppet be bald? It's an insult to my craftsmanship. Hair, long black hair. She was racking his brains to think about the solution. Pafu? Pafu, who still maintained the posture of the young Queen of Assyria, jumped onto She's shoulder and tilted its head with him. Imitating She was one of Pafu's favorite stunts. Pafu. Hay pinched Pafu's chest and saw the material that met his requirements. Black. Smooth. Good texture. She knocked on his head. Where is the long hair of the cursed black-haired girl? It's right here, right within the reach of his hand. Because this is his own hair. Well, let me think. It's this feeling. When She opened his eyes after switching a switch in his mind, his hair had become black, long, and straight. No matter the length or the hair quality, it was absolutely perfect. This was the only certificate recognized by the Starwing Knights, the legendary Mai's black hair. Well, I won't get bald if I go on like this. She vaguely remembered that there was a certain limit to the number of human hair. That was the reason why the vast majority of human men couldn't escape the fate of baldness. Those who wouldn't be bald all their lives just die faster than their hair. It is said that as long as they live long enough, they will eventually become bald. Don't you think that's what the Buddhists say? You are all destined to join Buddhism. Well, stop. Don't think so much. She picked up the scissors on the table and cut off about 1/3 of his black hair. Compared with the Queen's petite size, 1/3 of the long hair just met the requirements of the Queen's puppet. Pafu, come here. After all the materials were selected, She took a deep breath. Finally, it's time to start. It was his first time to make a puppet by hand. Even a real puppeteer had to figure out whether he could complete the complicated work, but Yunshi had an incredible sense of familiarity. It seemed that he had done similar work a long time ago. Pafu. Pafu bounced and had long forgotten what crime he had committed to it. Its memory seemed to last only 7 seconds. Once again, it fell into his clutches. Again, in the puppet room, the cry of shame echoed. The same scene happened in the quiet underground lake at the same time. Whoa! Ah! Don't! There! It can't be there! Don't bully me! Oh! Oh! As if his soul was guided by something, Yunshi's hands were very stable and without any tremor. Like the carving of blooming flowers, like the depiction of a vibrant spring, on the selected moonlight branches, Yunshi took Pafu as the prototype to reproduce the body outline of the queen little by little. From the angle of fingers to the cute shape of toes, everything was 100% reproduction. More than that, even the skin's smoothness and chest elasticity were exactly the same as that of Pafu, which was a perfect coincidence with the real queen. Even so, Yunshi was not satisfied. It was just a physical similarity. Even if the similarity reached 100%, it was not enough. The essence of making puppets is soul, which is the step of giving cold puppets human nature. Only with the soul could a puppet really fake people's eyes, crossing the boundary between the real and the unreal. That's the pride of being a puppeteer and the ultimate fantasy of puppeteers. He didn't know what it meant for the puppeteers to make such a puppet. He just knew that he would do the best for the queen, and the puppet he was making would definitely surpass the king's. No one had ever told Yunshi what a perfect puppet would be and what it meant to have a soul. Just like stepping into the starry sky chessboard, he lacked the most basic knowledge about the world of puppeteers. He was just immersed in the happiness of creating his ideal puppet with his own hands. It was natural in his mind to give soul to the puppet he made. He didn't even wonder about it. In the process of making the puppet, he even forgot that this was just the wedding puppet for the queen. One day and one night later, when the final finished product appeared in front of Yunshi, he smiled. Ah, what a beautiful child. Finally, a puppet girl in a black gothic long dress appeared on the desk. She closed her eyes, as Yunshi first saw the young queen sleeping on the throne of the giant, stupid spider, as if waiting for someone to wake her up. He himself didn't think that just making a puppet would make him almost run out of energy. His face was pale, but his eyes were shining. In that day and night, he did not eat any food and drink a drop of water. Putting everything into the process of making the puppet, he forgot the time, the limit of his body, and even overdrawn the power of the battle god's seed in advance. Making this black-haired puppet girl cost more energy than when he was fighting the degenerated king. However, just looking at the peaceful appearance of the sleeping puppet girl, he felt that everything was worth it. Even he can't believe that this perfect puppet girl was really a work created by himself. The smooth long black hair, white and tender skin, warm and fragrant feet, and small buds on the chest. It was exactly the same as the Queen of Assyria, and there was no difference in the smallest part of the body. Even the most difficult part, the joints of the puppet, were well handled by his hands, which looked not like the ball joints of a puppet at all. No matter how he looked at it, the girl in front of him was a real person, a sleeping little princess, which made him feel pity. However, Yunshi was not satisfied. That's not enough. Even though it was almost perfect, he still couldn't stop. There seemed to be a voice in his mind telling him that the perfection of the shell was meaningless, which was far from the acme of a puppet girl. The most perfect puppet girl should have her own soul, that is, essence. No matter how perfect the shell was, it would disappear as time passed by. Only a girl with a soul can touch eternity and become a charming flower in eternal bloom. That's what all puppeteers dream of. Just as Cyber Elf Alpha symbolizes the ultimate fantasy in the field of science, the puppet with the soul represents the ultimate fantasy in the field of puppeteering. In the real world, there were such puppets with their own soul, which were by countless incredible accumulation coincidences. Such a chance was even rarer than the birth of god weapons. It was the ultimate fantasy of all puppeteers, and was also the final subject of one of the most mysterious trials in the Seven Towers, the City of Puppets. To create a puppet with soul means to go deep into the forbidden area of the soul and explore the world that even gods dare not go deep into easily. Countless puppeteers have fallen into the darkness and become mad, which makes the puppeteer career stained with a strange and mysterious color. If you want to make a puppet with soul, you have to be prepared to pay the price with your soul. Those who step into this door, once you enter this world, you will never have a way to turn back. There are only two choices: to live a normal life as an ordinary puppeteer or to sacrifice everything for the ultimate puppet. Yunshi was not a puppeteer, and he didn't know any of the famous sayings among these puppeteers. He just followed his original intention, just like playing chess happily on the starry sky chessboard. He did his best to create the perfect puppet that was most suitable for the queen. Just as children don't know what taboos they will violate when they do something, Yunshi, who didn't know the pain and madness of puppeteers, directly opened the door of the taboo. Well, sacrifice the soul. Can I use my seeds as an alternative? Yunshi thought about 3 seconds and then began to create seeds. So far, the concept of the soul has been the focus of many scholars and even gods. People can observe the existence of the soul, but they can't understand what kind of existence the soul is and why it symbolizes the essence of intelligent life. The soul is everywhere, but you can't recognize it. Yunshi's seeds were the embodiments of the power of the soul, the blessing given by stars to Yunshi, and the unique talent that Yunshi can hold. Yunshi planted about 20 seeds in a row into the puppet girl's body and finally felt the birth of wisdom from inside of the puppet girl's body. He was totally unaware of how rebellious it was. Even his teacher, Cassina the battle god, can't do it. Not through the precipitation of the time of thousands of years. Not through the curse or blessing from gods and demons. With only 20 seeds, Yunshi had given the puppet girl her soul. In the dark, the puppet girl opened her eyes and saw a pair of warm hands. These hands were putting black hair knitting decorations on her chest. Your skin is as bright as the moonlight. Your mind is as flawless as white paper. So I'll give you a name and wish you to be the closest to the sun and the closest to perfection. Your name is White Moon. Ah, I see. This person is the one who created me and gave me the meaning of being in the world. This soul, this throb, this feeling of being warmed and blessed will never be forgotten. My name is White Moon, the blessed puppet, the luckiest in the world. Thank you, my father. Well, in this way, I can marry the queen. Yunshi looked at the beautiful puppet girl who sent out faint breath with satisfaction. Then, he said this forbidden sentence. For the girl who was just born and thought that she was the happiest and most loved puppet in the world, she heard the words from her father. Like a thunderclap on a sunny day. Well, let me see. The spell used to summon the queen is... Yunshi opened the Diary of the Kings, reading the incantations behind the cover. Open the door for me, my knight. Days and days, I was so alone. Although I have always forgotten my fate, I met you. Suddenly in the light, I was awakened. In the complete darkness, I stood up in silence and silence. I want you to be my hope. I will introduce you to my family. I hope things will always go well. Whenever you and I are together, whenever you are by my side, in front of you, I take off the mask of fate and look at your face. The future is far from us, and I don't know much about it, but I'm sure you are my light. Find me out, the person who wants to be with me. Give me beautiful sacrifices, weep, let me love, let me rejoice. Everything in the world can be seen at a glance. It's all dull, unpleasant, and confusing. Only you can make me happy and dream. I can't treat everyone equally and gently. I can't pray sincerely for those who are important to me. I think it's good for important people to feel bad for me and cry for me. So cry for me and marry me. I will be a unique bride, the bride of Moonlight. The song was a little strange and sad, with a trace of mystery that does not belong to the world. Yunshi felt if he closed his eyes and looked at that under the bloody moonlight, he would see the beautiful girl wearing a bloody wedding dress was crying. What is she waiting for? What is she looking forward to? The bride of Moonlight, is this the origin of the biggest sacrifice for the kingdom? Bathed in the bloody moonlight, the image of the Queen of Assyria had never been so real. Do you see that? Under the bloody moonlight, The queen's whisper echoed in his ear. It was not the voice of the young queen in the underground lake, but a voice that was more mature, hoarse, and charming. It was the voice of the queen who had experienced too much. It was the whisper of the Millennium Queen. Yes, I see it. The preparations for the agreement have been completed. She responded to the queen's whisper, pressing the diary of the kings in front of his chest. Well, get ready. My knight, welcome the queen. You have to take care of her and meet all her demands. Swear to protect her and regard her as the most beautiful princess in the world. No matter how ugly the carrier you use, you must like her appearance from the bottom of your heart. It's a blessing and a curse. Those who gaze at the blood moon are also gazed at by the blood moon. Under the blood moon, the queen in her wedding dress raised her hands. The blood of the moonlight blossomed like fireworks in the bloody sky. Ah! Has it started yet? Lying on the throne of the giant silly spider, the young queen looked at the huge crack in the sky and showed a look of expectation and smiling. Finally, I can go to that world full of sunshine again. No matter how ugly the carrier is, just going to the sunny world will make her happy. That's her only chance to go to the sunny world. It's a rare holiday time. Only by the wedding with the king can she have a short day to leave the underground lake. Oh, I hope this time the puppet made by the new king will be slightly suitable, at least not to make too many mistakes in body proportions. It's very uncomfortable to use a body that doesn't match my body. The queen's request for the puppet she was going to use went only so low. After all, the puppets made by kings were basically garbage. Every king who can make a puppet with a suitable body proportion would be rewarded. Even when they returned to the bloody Crescent, they would get closer to the spider and become the queen's guards. The king of this generation seems to be somewhat different. What kind of puppet will he make? If only he hadn't got the body proportion wrong. With such little expectations, the young queen closed her eyes. In the forgotten ruins, the queen in her wedding dress looked at another version of herself and smiled. Happy holiday, little me. Opening her eyes, the queen felt that her body had an unnatural lightness. It seems that the body proportion of the puppet made by the new king is correct. No, not only that, it's very, very suitable. Normally, when she possessed the body of the puppet, the first thing she would feel was darkness, then the cold body, which was the inevitable conflict caused by the mismatch between soul and body. Every time she arrived, the Queen of Assyria needed a lot of time adapting to the body of the puppet. Because she was descending, relying on the power of the contract with the king, so she needed a new puppet to be her carrier every time. But this time, when she descended into the body of this puppet, she didn't feel dark or cold at all. Instead, it was a sense of familiarity and reassurance. Opening her eyes, she saw a slightly strange ceiling, but regardless of the softness of the fingertips, the weight of the chest, and the rhythm of breathing, all of them were the same as usual. The young Queen of Assyria even thought that the wedding ceremony failed this time. She didn't come to the mortal world, but was still in the underground lake. But why is there such a thing as a ceiling in the underground lake? Moreover, the closer she looked at the ceiling, the more familiarity she felt from it. It seemed that every time she woke up, she could see similar scenery. Where am I? The black-haired girl opened her mouth and looked at her little hand in perplexity. This snow-white hand is too familiar. Because this was her own hand, whether it was the radiance of the fingertips or the smoothness of the skin, it was her own hand. But it was clearly not her body. What happened? Welcome, Your Majesty. She wiped the sweat from his forehead. The 20 seeds he created were about to drain all his energy. He didn't expect to give the puppet a soul that actually consumed so much. What's more, he felt that not only the 20 seeds were consumed, but also something he couldn't understand was also consumed as well, so he could grant White Moon life. Even though he knew nothing about puppeteers, he vaguely felt that he seemed to have accomplished something remarkable. Here. Is this that room? The queen turned her head slightly and saw the familiar scenery. Rows after rows of worn-out abandoned puppets were placed against the wall. Each of them carried a memory of the Queen of Assyria. Every one was the carrier she had used, the substitute for the wedding holiday. Over and over again, she used these ugly puppets, receiving the blessing and cheers of the whole kingdom. Only at this time could she feel the beauty of the sunshine world and keep her final innocence. Such a time was so precious, so she could bear all the shortcomings. She even left marks on the puppets. The kings wrote down their lives in diaries. The queen didn't have so much time, she could only use these puppets as a sign. For the Queen of Assyria, puppets were the starting point of the holiday. The wedding, in essence, was a ceremony for the queen to keep her final innocence. The kings weren't guarding the forgotten ruins, but the Queen of Assyria in the underground lake. As long as there was purity in the queen's heart, then the kingdom of Assyria would not perish, and the oath of the knights would continue. No one had ever thought that one day, there would be such a young boy, become the prince of the kingdom. In order to fulfill the agreement with the young queen, this boy had created a puppet girl who could be regarded as a miracle. His hands gave this puppet girl the same perfect look as the Queen of Assyria. His wish was to grant the puppet girl a soul and a name. Her perfection even left the queen in doubt whether it was true or a dream. Perhaps, this dream, from a very early start, had become strange. Well, are you satisfied? In some sense, she's like your daughter. She smiled at the queen, who looked at him in confusion. Although it was at the cost of feeling feeble all over his body, he felt proud when he looked at the queen's surprised eyes. Now he may be qualified to participate in the trial of the puppet city in the Sky Tower. After all, even the mysterious Queen of Assyria was shocked looking at his handicraft. White Moon is great. Is this a puppet? The Queen of Assyria looked at her smooth skin, soft body and slender hands, and could not connect the word puppet with the body she was using. Aren't puppets the wooden dummies in this room? She had been used to rough joints and the wrong proportions of the body. As long as the puppet at least looked like a human, there was always a way to drive it. Anyway, it was her magic that drove the puppet's body, the indescribable power of the abyss. No matter how ragged the puppet was, as long as she was driving it by her consciousness, it could eventually move. For the Queen of Assyria, she had been used to wearing a headscarf to cover her face and even distort the figure of the puppet in other people's eyes when necessary. Even in the most glorious peak time, the queen had no carrier like White Moon. This was an art above art. This was a miracle that didn't exist in Assyria. With the combination of beauty, soul and pride, it had not only the appearance of the real queen, but also the innocence of the young Queen of Assyria. It could be seen as the daughter created by Shi and the Queen of Assyria together. The queen reached out her white fingertips, touched her soft cheek and gently held out her tongue. She could feel the taste of her skin. The touch was so real that she opened her eyes wide. No way, how could there be such a perfect puppet? The young queen suddenly had a strong feeling that she had never experienced before. She likes this body. It was impossible to imagine entering another dummy body called a puppet, which had become total garbage in her mind. For the first time, she wanted something from the bottom of her heart. She successfully touched the heart of the young queen with his White Moon. For a girl looking forward to love, for the young queen who was longing for a fantastic future, at this moment, something had been changed forever. White Moon, that's her name. The body material is mainly moonlight branches. I think the moonlight branches are more consistent with your temperament. The material of the hair gave me a headache. Fortunately, I finally found the right material, the hair of the blessed black-haired girl. Well, she told a little lie. After all, it was too shameful to say that he used his own hair. Eyes are also a problem. The material of black crystal is sufficient, but it took me a lot of time to carve the eyes with spirituality, which almost failed. In the end, though, it was done. This is the most beautiful puppet made for you, our White Moon. Paranoia is sometimes incurable. He had never made a puppet before, but for the wedding that shouldn't have happened, Shi went all out to do the best he could. Even he didn't realize that he had such a hopeless side. He could not understand how tempting the gift called White Moon was to the young Queen of Assyria, who yearned for pure love in the book of fairy tales. It's a gift that even the gods would be excited about. For the Queen of Assyria, it's a treasure that can't be dreamt of even in her sweetest dreams. White Moon, that's a nice name. The Queen of Assyria firmly remembered all the names of these materials. Moonlight branches. The black hair of the blessed girl. Black crystal. Oh, I'm sorry. You shouldn't be interested in that. She scratched his head embarrassed. He was too keen on one thing and even forgot the time and didn't know how to stop. This was a small shortcoming of his. No, I'm interested. From the fingertips to the tiptoes, the queen raised her skirt and turned around, showing a happy smile. This body. It's so beautiful. Yes, there is no dirt at all, nor is it polluted by the power of the blood moon. Compared with the Millennium Queen immersed in the old memories, White Moon is the purest and most flawless princess. She never thought that someone could offer her such a perfect puppet. This dream. I really don't want to wake up. What do you want to be the reward for making this body for me? Sitting on the long table, the young queen looked at the young man who presented her White Moon with appreciative eyes. Such a perfect figure deserves the most extravagant wish. Do you want to be immortal? Do you want the right to rule the whole continent? Do you want to become a dragon knight, ride on the dragon's back and fly in the sky? All of these, she can help him achieve. When receiving a gift, you have to give the same gift back. This is the royal etiquette. The young queen has cultivated the habit since she was 6 years old. My wish. For now, I only want to defeat that terrible dragon. She sighed. The main task of this trial was so difficult. The trial in the water god's world was difficult too, but at least, he had the power of 1,000,000 brides, the patronage of the water god, and even the help of Cassina the battle god, so that he could defeat Shea Longness the sky sword. It's impossible to gather so many advantages in this trial world, the dragon's war world. This wish. I cannot do it. The Queen of Assyria showed an expression of distress. Only this wish was beyond her ability. The dragon was a very dangerous creature. The green light on the top of its head could destroy everything. In this dream, there will probably be no stronger creature than the emerald dragon that was still sleeping. When she wakes up, it will probably cause chaos in the world. Then, I have no other wish. He never expected that the queen would really help him. How about the blood of ancient gods? I can give you that. This was the most precious treasure that the Queen of Assyria could give. That was the essence of the blood moon, the power gained by the queen after sacrificing the whole of Assyria. Even ordinary people have the right to enter the nightmare world as long as they inject the blood of ancient gods. However, as a price, the human being injected with the blood of ancient gods will never be human again, and even have to drink blood for a living, and have to resist the knowledge that makes the mind crazy all the time. What is that? She looked at his task list, and the line "the whisper of the ancient gods" was shining. It's terrible and filthy. You can choose to use it or not. The queen took out a small bottle of blood and put it into Yunshi's hands. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Yunshi once again heard the eerie and low voice. The voice recounted the wisdom of the ancient gods, the knowledge that the human brain could not bear. Any ordinary people who listen to this voice will go crazy. Drink it. There's everything you need in it. Only nightmares are eternal. Inconceivably, he really heard the voice. It was temptation and guidance. It seems that as long as he drinks the ancient god's blood, he can immediately gain the power to face the dragon. And some instinct told him that this was not a delusion. This bottle of ancient god's blood really had that power. Well, one of the side quests had been completed. Yunshi took over this bottle of ancient god's blood and had no plan to use it now. Maybe it can be used as a trump card. The side quest, the Whisper of the Ancient God, was successfully completed. Along the way, the favorability of the queen had also been greatly improved. The exchange of their most important treasures is also a very important thing for the Queen of Assyria. That means that both sides have established an unbreakable relationship, not between the knight and the queen, but between the two sides that are in the same position. Watching she carefully put the blood bottle away, the queen's little face suddenly turned red. Because the so-called blood moon is actually, and the blood of the ancient gods is naturally. After the gift exchange between Yunshi and the young queen, the door was knocked on gently. Dong, dong, Prince. It was Robin. Come in. He had a sense of expectation. He expected how surprised Robin would be when she saw the white moon made by him. It's probably like a father's mood when he introduced his little princess to others. Even now, Yunshi felt incredulous that he actually made such a lovely and beautiful girl as White Moon. It seems that my talent as a puppeteer is very good. I come in. The mysterious royal augur, Robin pushed open the door of the puppet room and asked Yunshi, "Have you finished making the puppet?" As she said this, she began to look left and right, as if she wanted to find his masterpiece from a pile of wooden puppets that looked alike. "Well, it's done. Look." Yunshi confidently pointed to the Queen of Assyria, who was curiously looking at Robin. "Your Majesty, you don't have to do that. I don't object to you having a date with girls." Robin was speechless. As a king, it was normal to have one or two lovers. The king could only have one queen, which was the meaning of the existence of the kingdom. It was an open secret that the king's children were all given birth to by his lovers. Even some high-status lovers had held the position of acting king for a short time in some special historical period. It's just that the age of this lover is too young. It's a crime. Well, what did you say? He was puzzled. If it's your interest, Your Majesty, I won't say anything more. Robin sighed. Well, the interest of the new king can be confirmed. He even didn't forget to have an affair in the puppet room. It can be imagined how bad the puppet he made was. Fortunately, the queen has very low requirements for puppets. As long as he has made one, it should not be a problem. Where is the puppet? Robin once again looked at the puppets. Well, it looks like that bald puppet is very new, but its size is too small. It not only has a bald head, but also has a pair of lifeless, dead fish-like eyes. However, the proportion of 5 sense organs is normal. If this is the work of the new king, well, it is not totally unacceptable. It just seems that the proportion is too small. Right here. Yunshi once again pointed to the queen, who was smiling at him. Who is this lady? Robin walked to the bald puppet used by him to practice his skill, and tried to not look at the little figure the king was pointing to. In this day and night, the little princess must have been put into various postures by His Majesty, and every corner of her body is stained with the king's taste. She could imagine that with her eyes closed. The snow-white body struggled in His Majesty's arms and was unable to resist. During the time when she was far away from the puppet room, there must have been a lot of unspeakable things going on in this room. But what can she do? As the prince is about to ascend the throne, His Majesty can really do whatever he wants. What a poor child, you must be in agony but don't dare to show it on your face. This puppet has a special artistic style. Grabbing the bareheaded puppet in her hands, Robin praised Yunshi against her will. This bald head. At first glance, it looks like a dead fish, but maybe it's unexpectedly strong. If it wore a cape or something, maybe it can be called Bald Cape Hero. Well, is this the so-called art style of returning to nature? That is just a material I used to test myself. This is my work, the puppet I made. Yunshi couldn't help but look at Robin and point to the queen again. Which one? Robin's eyes crossed the queen and looked at the puppets behind, trying to find out the puppet that might be his work. It's her. He finally couldn't bear it. It's unexpected that making a puppet too perfect would cause such a misunderstanding. Between him and White Moon was the purest relationship. It was like the relationship between a father and his daughter. Every inch of White Moon's skin, every joint, even every hair came from him. It's not my lover, it's my work, just like my daughter. Holding White Moon in his arms, Yunshi proudly declared to Robin while ignoring the weak struggle of the Queen of Assyria. Yeah. Happy. This is a hug from my father. The Queen of Assyria found that when she was held by Yunshi, she did not resist at all, and even had an involuntary feeling of intimacy. Just in the beginning, she felt a little bit of confusion, and soon stopped. Obviously, there is no heartbeat in this body, and there should be no blood. This is the body of a puppet. However, there is a kind of impulse overflowing from the heart and flooding the whole body. Here is the warmest and happiest place in the world. I want to stay here all the time and occupy this position. I won't let anyone take this position away. It belongs to me. A strong feeling the young Queen of Assyria had never experienced before, Feelings were overflowing in her heart. Tension, uneasiness, excitement, a variety of feelings mixed together, and finally turned into fireworks. It was like a certain consciousness was waking up in this body and making its own voice. Even though the voice was so weak now, and no one could notice her, just like a little bud in the dark. Under the bloody moon, on the throne of the giant stupid spider, the young queen's body trembled slightly. The spiders around her began to wake up. Instinctively, they realized that some changes were taking place in the underground lake, which had been frozen for a long, long time. In the forgotten ruins, the Millennium Queen in a bloody wedding dress raised her head and looked at the growing blood moon in the sky. Sealed time, sealed fate, sealed years, is beginning to thaw. The once stagnant gear of the world began to turn again. Is that true? Robin looked at the Queen of Assyria in Yunshi's arms with an astonished look. How could there be such a ridiculous thing? The white skin, dark long hair, watery eyes, the blush on the skin, the arc of snow-white feet. This is a puppet. Is there a mistake, my king? Well, she is White Moon, the queen I'm going to marry. He didn't realize how powerful his words were to the queen. Originally, the wedding with the kings was just a holiday for the young queen. The wedding was just a symbol. It was just a way for her to come to the human world with the help of the ceremony. It was just a way for her to feel the sunshine, the streets, and the crowds again. Because every time the puppet she used was too shoddy, she didn't have any sense of substitution for the puppet. All the puppets were just a disposable tool. But this time, it was different. The White Moon made by Yun-shi was different from any other puppet used by the Queen of Assyria in the past. This is the perfect puppet that only Yun-shi could make for the young queen. It is the only puppet who could fully carry her soul. To some extent, White Moon has transcended the common sense of the world. In some sense, as Yun-shi said, she is his daughter and the Queen of Assyria. This body is not a rigid puppet, it's White Moon who can breathe, stand, and be so perfect that no one can tell it is a puppet. The Queen of Assyria couldn't tell what kind of dream she was dreaming. There was only one thing to confirm. She liked White Moon. She liked the puppet Yun-shi made for her. In this world, there was no precious gift or treasure that could make her feel happier. Compared to her in the underground lake. Compared to her wandering in the forgotten ruins. White Moon is a real existence here. Being held, I can feel the warmth. Being praised, I can feel happiness. Although not under the blood moon, I can also move freely, speak freely, and even naturally communicate with others. Such a world, she felt as if she had returned to the time when nothing had happened, when she was still a carefree little girl. White Moon was unlike her. It was pure and flawless, like having all the beauty in the world. As Yun-shi said, this was her daughter. Now, she's going to use this puppet's body to get married? Wedding. My own wedding. Is this too early? Yun-shi's puppet technology was so fantastic that even the young Queen of Assyria was completely trapped inside, unable to extricate herself. At the same time, in White Moon's body, a little consciousness was absorbing all kinds of intelligence and growing rapidly with the passage of time. Like a small sapling, feeling a fatal crisis, desperately absorbing all the nutrients. Wedding, get married, bride. It's not me, no way. Even if it's my mom, no way. I won't let go of you. Inside of the happy eyes of the queen, some confused thoughts flashed. My God. Robin covered her forehead with her hand and shouted out. How could this be possible? The king's handwork is so good. It can move freely, show its own feelings, and have no different appearance from human girls. How can this miracle be made by my prince, the new king? Even if it takes 10 or 100 years, it is impossible to create such a miracle. Not to mention that the king achieved it within one day. It was not until she confirmed that the black-haired girl in front of her was really the one in the rumor by using her own secret magic, she could only choose to believe it. It is true that His Majesty has really created an incredible miracle. Give soul and wisdom to a cold puppet, and marry her. In Robin's eyes, in the trajectory of fate, suddenly appeared a huge distortion. From the moment when Yun-shi created White Moon, the fate that had been predestined in Robin's eyes was suddenly all disordered. It was like a thread with clear branches was suddenly caught by a stray cat and twisted into a ball of wool, which would make people feel despair to undo it. The prince would kill his father and marry his mother, ascended the throne and gathered the girls of the Starwing knights to get the help of the witches. After that, he would challenge the dragon that ravaged the world. Originally, this fate should never change. The prince would eventually become the same person as all kings. Just like the passing on from generation to generation, the prince would become a king, a hero, and finally pass the throne of the king to the next prince. The future has been changed. This was the first thing Robin noticed after seeing the Queen's curious, happy eyes. Perhaps His Majesty won't repeat the fate of the kings. The fate of the world will also usher in new changes. Your Majesty, you have done something quite bold. How are the wedding preparations? She hadn't realized what he had done. Well, it's all going well and we can have the wedding in 3 days. All the nobles of the kingdom will come to the capital to attend your wedding. Congratulations in advance, Your Majesty. The fate of the Queen of Assyria. The fate of the kingdom. The fate of the Starwing Knights. Even the fate of the world's ultimate enemy, the dragon, had become strange. What should I do? That's good. I'm looking forward to it. She also regarded the wedding as a ceremony. He was just a representative of the kingdom to sign a vow with the real master of the kingdom, the ancient Queen of Assyria. He had no idea how intimate the young queen looked at him from in his arms. It's from White Moon's subconscious to her father, and it's also mixed with the heart feeling of the queen. Yes, the young Queen of Assyria was moved. For the first time in her life, she got treasures that she could not even dream of. No longer alone under the bloody moon. White Moon's body was like her own. That kind of feeling was just like a girl from a poor family suddenly got a soft, lovely, fluffy, precious super doll one day. Just walking and talking can touch the queen's heart. What kinds of puppets did she use before? Compared with White Moon, compared with her lovely, beautiful and elegant daughter, they are all garbage. Garbage. Even the bare-headed puppet in the royal augur's hand is thousands of times stronger than these garbage. I don't want to go back to the lonely underground lake. If it was White Moon, if it was her, now, she could really appear in the world of sunshine. Yes, I can. Compared with those abandoned puppets of the past, White Moon's body had a unique charm and characteristics. Even if she was cursed, if she was in White Moon's body, she could go to the sunny world. Don't hide, but be above board, working hand in hand with the person I like. Think of it, do it. The Queen of Assyria had never been full of courage like at this moment. Let's go out. Holding Yunshi's hand, the eyes of the queen were full of longing. He nodded. White Moon was perfect, so no one would find out their secret. This was something that the kings couldn't do and only he could accomplish. Date. The Queen of Assyria could feel her heart beating faster and faster, and her blood seemed to be boiling. Obviously, puppets don't have these at all, but she could feel them. Robin let out a sigh. Now, it's going to be a mess. The wedding ceremony was always the most important event of the whole kingdom. But there had never been a king who could really let the Queen of Assyria appear in front of the people. It's not that they didn't want to do it, but that it was impossible to do it. If people knew that the queen married to the king was just a puppet, the people in the entire kingdom would go mad. What a fool. Finally, Robin tried to deduce what he would encounter and shook her head. Apparently, the result wasn't promising. Picking up the bare-headed puppet, Robin left the puppet room. She had to tell those who were preparing for the wedding that there would be a huge change in the wedding process. The ancient royal palace was decorated with old murals and sculptures. These were originally ordinary things. However, the Queen of Assyria stared at them along the way after leaving the puppet room. Look at this, and this. They are stories from a long time ago. Ah, yes, that's my story. The death of the queen? I am not dead. The queen hopped on the cobbled road as if she had returned to her childhood. Is it really not a crime that I want to marry such a young girl? Looking at the queen's pure smile, Yunshi suddenly felt guilty. Don't you think it's a crime to marry such a queen, you kings? No, because it's impossible for us to get in touch with such a queen. Your Majesty, how do you have time to play with a child? Don't you need to prepare for the wedding? Who are you? Smiled at Yunxi. The ceremony is finished. Yunxi absently answered, who are you? That's my bride. For a moment, Hua Yu's eyes changed. It was full of shock. It was hot as if burning. Bride? Is it her? Full of doubt, but also full of jealousy and disbelief. For the first time, the leader of the Starwing Knights doubted what her ears heard. Yes, she is my bride. The only queen of the kingdom. In fact, what Yunxi wanted to say was the immortal queen of the kingdom. However, this secret can't be told to others. In the entire kingdom, only the kings, the augurs in charge of the ceremony, and the prince who would inherit the kingdom could know this secret. The criteria for choosing the prince was not strength or bloodline, but the faith to perform knight duties and the determination to marry the young queen under the blood moon. Why it would be such a small child, Hua Yu had never been so shaken in her heart. Everyone knew that the kings needed to marry a mysterious queen. However, the mysterious queen would only appear in front of the nobles and people at the wedding. In addition to the wedding day, the queen, it was as if she didn't exist at all. No one knew where the queen came from, why she must marry the king, and why she would disappear after the marriage. There were too many unknowns, but after thousands of years, people were gradually accustomed to this strange custom. People even imagined that there may be some special agreement between the tribe where the queen came from and the kings. The so-called marriage ceremony, after thousands of years of evolution, had become a kind of sacrifice for the kingdom. No one had ever seen the true face of the mysterious queen. After the wedding, the queen would never fulfill any of the queen's duties or show her power nor have any opinion on the king's numerous lovers. Except for the day when His Majesty ascended the throne, people almost didn't realize that there was always a queen in this kingdom. The non-existent queen, this was the common name for the mysterious queen, because the queen's sense of existence was too low. Including Hua Yu, everyone also regarded the queen who would only appear at the wedding for one day as a story, just like the jewel on the king's crown. In the recorded history, no matter which wedding, the mysterious queen will only appear on the wedding day, and then disappear without a trace. Many people doubted whether the queen was just a mascot, or was whether her existence really existed. Now, Hua Yu knew that no matter what happened to the previous kings, the girl the current king, Yunxi, was going to marry, was not something that didn't exist nor was a mascot. Here she was, chasing butterflies and running in the sun, showing a happy smile. It seems that just chasing the butterflies in this way could make her feel satisfied from the bottom of her heart. Why would it be her? Never heard that the prince had known such a girl, who is obviously underage. No. I came first. Hua Yu bite her teeth and a feeling of pain nibbled at her heart little by little. It's so cunning. She's never been around the prince, but is going to occupy the nearest position beside the prince and surpass everyone. She surpassed everyone of the Starwing Knights. They all joined the Starwing Knights with some special expectations. Everyone knew that the life of the king was not long, and the prince would soon ascend the throne. Anyway, the queen was just a mascot. Even if she would appear at the wedding, she would soon disappear. In this way, everyone has a chance. Even if they can't become the queen, but the king can have many lovers. It's acceptable to everyone in the Starwing Knights. The king would have a queen, but he would only have babies with his lovers. This already became a tradition of the kingdom after thousands of years. Why? Why did the queen really appear this time? She wasn't being tightly wrapped in a black wedding dress and maintained silence. She walked in the sun, wearing a lovely and light black princess skirt, chasing colorful butterflies, pure as a child who knows nothing about the world. Considering her age, could the kings marry? No, her height is obviously lower than that of the recorded queens. Hua Yu shook her head and drove this ridiculous idea out of her mind. The queens who appeared in the Moonlight sacrifice had amazing similarities. Silence, reticence, and never show their true faces. Hua Yu couldn't connect any of them to the lively and lovely young girl in front of her at all. Prince, is she really the legendary queen? Even though he had previously explained it, Hua Yu still had great doubts, or jealousy. Do you like her? This issue was very important, not only for Hua Yu, but also for the whole group of the Starwing Knights. Well, she's the queen indeed, though we haven't finished the wedding yet. Do I like her? Well, this time, Yunshi couldn't give a simple and clear answer. After all, it was really difficult to say that he liked such a little girl. There's a problem. There's a big problem. Whether from the perspective of love or as the leader of the Starwing Knights, who are you? Realized Yunshi's insincerity. The queen who never showed her true face suddenly appeared. The prince who was going to be the king answered her question with a rare stumble. They must be hiding something. This was her intuition as the leader of the Starwing Knights. Well, it was actually a wonderful misunderstanding. The reason he couldn't say the truth was that he didn't want to expose the queen's secret, and he really didn't know how to explain the reason why he wanted to marry an obviously underage girl. Even if this young girl's real identity was the master of the Forgotten Ruins, the queen of the ancient Assyrian kingdom, a strong person, as her, who could kill Yunshi hundreds of times with her eyes closed. Looking at the young queen who was running after a butterfly, he couldn't find a reason to explain it to who are you. What a luxurious trouble that only the prince would have. I see. Who are you? Suddenly understood. As expected, there is no love relationship between the prince and the obviously underage queen. From the way he looked at her, it was more like the gentle way a father looked at his daughter. Then, it can only be explained by the reasons of a political marriage. Is that rumor true? In order to make a vow with a certain tribe, all the kings had to marry a queen from that tribe. White Moon, don't run too fast. He knew that the Queen of Assyria had a limited time to use this puppet body. Although White Moon's body could greatly reduce her consumption, the time she could stay here had been extended to about 3 days or more. The puppet's body will not feel tired, but it will also consume magic power relatively fast. Therefore, if she continued to run around like this, she may have to stop activities before the arrival of the wedding. At last, the queen caught the butterfly in her hands, then she extended her hands and let the butterfly fly away. It doesn't matter if the butterfly can be caught. What matters to her is the process. It's the biggest luxury for the young queen who can't leave the underground lake. Why the previous kings could only look across countless spiders at the queen sleeping on the throne of the giant spider. It was not that the queen was so inhumane, but that she could only use long sleep to pass the long time in the underground lake. For the young queen of Assyria, the underground lake was actually a cage that she couldn't leave, the place where she was permanently confined under the bloody new moon. Silent, cold. Except for spiders, cold lake water, and forever red Crescent, she had nothing. For thousands of years, only when the kings could walk there and swear allegiance to the young queen of Assyria. Only at that time, could the young queen descend on the puppets made by the kings and come to the sunshine world as a hypocritical queen for one day. It was because she could still look forward to such a holiday that the young queen of Assyria had endured the long years in the underground lake. But this time, it was different. For the first time, she had a perfect body that could move freely. The body of this puppet was exactly the same as that of her. It could smile or walk, even if it ran like this in the sunshine world, she wouldn't feel any discomfort. For the first time, she felt real freedom and real happiness. Like a bird released from a cage, she spread her wings and flew freely under the sky. Once she realized this freedom, she could never go back to the past. Is the air in the sunshine world so fresh? It's totally different from what I smelt in the past. Always being surrounded, she couldn't smell the fragrance of flowers and trees, she couldn't monopolize the dancing butterfly, she couldn't run on the earth without any restriction. Every step and every breath here was different from the past. There is no need to hide anything here. This here was the real her. She was completely addicted to this small and lovely body. I already can't go back to the past. Lifting the skirt corner, she panted in front of Yunshi. Her face was ruddy, and her eyes were shining. The time sleeping in the underground lake was like a freezing black and white picture. And the time after meeting him was colorful, full of surprises and infinite expectations. The first intimate contact, the first hug, and some kind of premonition between them quietly colored the black and white world. His voice, his confidence, and his concentration were different from those of other kings. His hands created a miracle called White Moon, which turned impossibility into possibility. The black and white world disappeared. Every moment with him had a different experience. It was a dreamlike, colorful world. I want to stay. I want to let this dream go on. It's nice to get married. Holding Yunshi's hand and smiling sweetly, Queen of Assyria began to look forward to her wedding 3 days later. No way. Even though it's my mom, I won't let you have him. In the young body, a newborn consciousness sent out that silent cry. As the saying goes, good news never goes beyond the gate, while bad news spreads far and wide. The news of the appearance of the legendary queen spread throughout Wangcheng in a short afternoon. In the tavern, people were all talking about the king's bride who appeared for the first time in thousands of years. Have you heard that the queen finally appeared this time? A wine drinker announced the big news to those who did not know the news with an excited expression. Queen. Does our kingdom have a queen? Queen. Does John drink too much now? Our queen. Isn't it just a mascot? She won't come out before the wedding starts, and she only appears on the wedding day. This was the reaction of the ordinary people of the kingdom. After all, everyone was used to the tradition of the royal family. The so-called queen was basically a mascot. No, it's true this time. The queen has appeared. It's said that she's a beautiful woman. John, who got the gossip from the palace servant, had a strange look on his face, waiting for others to shout. As John expected, when the news came out, the people in the whole tavern exclaimed, "What? Is this true? That queen has appeared before the wedding day. How beautiful is she? Has anyone seen her true face? Isn't it said that the queen's veil can only be lifted by the king?" Well, after 1,000 years, there were many stories about the mysterious queen. Yes, more than one person saw her, and she is a more perfect girl than you think. John enjoyed everyone's expression. What does she look like? Is it true that the queen is from a desert tribe? Say it, John, drink my wine, drink as much as you like. Say it, don't let it beat you. Looking at the people's eager eyes, John said the truth triumphantly at last. Our queen is only 12 this year. As soon as he said it, the people in the tavern were boiling. 12 years old. Oh, our prince is really, the prince is going to be the king soon. It's understandable to be a bit headstrong for a young man, but marrying a 12-year-old, the queen is only 12 years old. No, that's not right. Some exclaimed their indignation, some envied, more shrugged their shoulders and forgive the prince for his little mistake. As for the king, well, after all, no one could let him change his option. Moreover, it's no harm to the people even if the prince is really going to marry an underage queen. However, our prince, the hero of the kingdom, the son of destiny, actually likes this. This was also a tavern, but it was forbidden for outsiders. It was just a tavern belonging to the Starwing Knights, and the atmosphere here was gloomy. No, I don't accept it. Ling Ling cried. The peaks on her chest were squeezed on the table and almost flattened. Why did that non-existent queen come out suddenly? Doesn't the queen only appear on the wedding day and then disappear? I joined the Starwing Knights to fall in love with the prince. No, I don't accept it. In the tavern, Ling Ling was not the only one with a sad expression. Other members also showed a lifeless expression, as if they just saw the end of the world. Everybody, don't be so desperate. Lulu, who was in charge of mixing wine, was the only one who was trying to comfort her drunk companions. Now, only Lulu still maintained her emotional stability. Her personality was that kind of good wife who accepts all the advantages and disadvantages of her beloved without any reason. Even if the prince was going to marry a young girl, she would bear it. However, not all people had such a good temper as Lulu. Most members of the Knights still wanted to fall in love with the prince and have a baby with him. Originally, they were all on the same running line. Even if their leader, Hua Yu, had a slight advantage, it was like a 3 meters advantage in the 100-meter race. But suddenly the queen directly appeared at the end of the 100-meter race. This is cheating. She won without even running. No one had ever regarded the mysterious queen as an enemy, because the wedding ceremony of the prince and her was just a perfunctory ceremony of the kingdom in their eyes. No one had ever thought that the Queen would appear suddenly and defeat all the members of the Starwing Knights with such an ultimate skill. For the young girls in love, this was 100 times more important than fighting against the dragon. If it wasn't for a reason that everyone knew exactly, none of them would join the newly formed Starwing Knights. The enemy is very strong. Xiao Cao drank the fruit wine made by Lulu one after another, and a group of companions of the Starwing Knights had fallen beside her. As the strongest girl of the Starwing Knights, her attitude was like a weather vane for the girls of the Starwing Knights. Even she began to get drunk. It meant that the spirit of the Starwing Knights was falling to the point of hopelessness. Lulu sighed at Xiao Cao, who looked soberer and more dangerous. Prince, you really don't know a girl's heart. Even if it's just a political marriage, that white moon is too young. No one will be reconciled to lose to such a young girl. If this went on, the Starwing Knights would probably soon be disbanded. You fool, don't be so sad. We still have a chance. Mai Lan comforted the crying Ling Ling. She couldn't just watch it. The Starwing Knights was in a life and death crisis. It was clear that most of them were only about 16 years old, but they drank like a group of sad old men. Looking at the appearance of her companions, Lulu silently concocted the medicine and wine that was beneficial to the body and mind, and frowned. Even though she tried to make the wine harmless to the body, they would only be intoxicated in the alcohol anesthesia. The girls' melancholy almost infected everyone except Lulu. They couldn't easily accept that their dream had been taken away by a young girl suddenly. In this respect, there was really no more mature girl than Lulu, who was so kind-hearted in nature. Tinkle. Just as everyone seemed to be about to get drunk, the doorbell at the entrance rang. Almost all the members of the entire Starwing Knights were here. At this time, the only person who would come here was not only Lulu, but everyone who was drunk or crying looked at the door. There, the golden spiral of blonde hair was shaking, like the last ray of sunshine in a long night. Compared with the girls in the tavern, only she still raised her head high, just like a princess who was confident and proud. No matter her mind or her calm demeanor, she was worthy of the name of the leader of the Starwing Knights. Behind her were the last two new members of the Starwing Knights. Mew Mew, who was looking around curiously, and Robin, who had a helpless expression on her face. Leader, who are you? Mew Mew Robin. Seeing who are you, many frustrated members of the Starwing Knights saw a glimmer of unrealistic hope. Before today, undoubtedly, the person closest to the prince in the Starwing Knights was their respected leader. She was the most outstanding noble girl of the kingdom, the founder of the Starwing Knights. Her personality and charm supported the Starwing Knights. No matter if it was the daughter of the noble family or the children born in poverty, they all agreed that Hua Yu was the most perfect leader of the Starwing Knights. At this moment, her emergence undoubtedly brought a little wave of hope to the lifeless members of the Starwing Knights. Everyone looked at her, waiting for something, or expecting something. Hello, everyone. When Hua Yu glanced at the tavern, she knew that the worst situation she expected had happened. The entire Starwing Knights had fallen into despair, just like when she saw the young bride for the first time. Except for Lulu, others could be regarded as if they had abandoned themselves. Xiao Cao was drinking in silence. Ling Ling was crying to death. Mai Lan was completely disorganized. The more hope and bigger dream they had, the stronger the blow they would suffer when they faced this rat trap. Like the darkness before dawn, the Starwing Knights had come to a dangerous situation of disintegration. At this time, she had to stand up. Are you going to give up? First, ask them what they really think. If they really want to quit the Starwing Knights because of this, it means that they will only reach this level after all. Oh, I don't want to, but... Ling Ling cried like a child. She was the one who suffered the most after knowing that the prince would marry White Moon. If it was a 100-meter race, then Hua Yu was 3 meters ahead than others, and she was at least half a meter ahead of others. She was very satisfied with this situation. Why would the underage bride pop up and occupy the flag of the destination? Foul, it's a foul. She wanted to report anonymously. It's cheating. It's cheating. I don't want to give up, and we can't give up. Ling Ling. At this time, only my Lan comforted Ling Ling. In her eyes, although Ling Ling was stupid and couldn't handle everything well, Ling Ling's love for the prince was the most straightforward. The confused Ling Ling, the crying Ling Ling, the childish Ling Ling made my Lan feel the same. Her tears were for all the girls of the Starwing Knights. Then, don't give up. The leader of the Starwing Knights, who are you, announced with a firm voice. Yes, never give up. No matter how powerful the opponent is, even if it is so hopeless, we don't want to give up and won't give up. The fact that no one in this tavern left was the best proof. If they really give up hope, how can they all come here coincidentally and wait for an opportunity? This opportunity was what she must bring as the leader of the Starwing Knights, and what she must shoulder as the leader of the Starwing Knights. At any time, she must stand up, even in the face of a desperate situation. This is the virtue of a knight and the creed of who are you. The white golden rose never withers. But there will be the wedding soon. And it seems that the prince does like that child. This was the most frustrating trouble for most members of the Starwing Knights and the unsolved problem that led to this situation. The prince likes the child named White Moon. That child has the right to marry the prince, which is the tradition of the kingdom for thousands of years. If we don't do it, how do we know that it is impossible? Hua Yu's eyes sparkled with extraordinary brilliance and grabbed Robin's hand. Say it to us. Tell us the prophecy. Robin's face looked helpless. These young knights are really lawless. Force the royal augur to predict. Even the kings didn't do this. What prophecy? What's the matter? Is it about this wedding? Robin, tell us. At this time, even a glimmer of hope was like the last straw for a drowning man to the girls of the Starwing Knights. Cough. This is not a prediction of love, Robin coughed. This prophecy points to the ultimate fate of the world. The bloody birds flew on Robin's shoulders and gave a strange laugh, as if they were laughing at these knights who knew nothing about love. Robin used her hero-ranked skill. Robin's unfortunate prophecy. Let go of the queen, let go of the queen. The queen is beautiful and lovely, the queen is gentle and generous, the queen is pregnant. Who did it? It's you, it's you, it's you, the sparrow who sneaks a taste. Blood moon falls, white moon rises, and no one survives. The prince who kills his father and marries his mother will eventually witness the end of blood. The undisguised malice and the cursing ridicule made the girls look at each other. This prediction is really very bad. Pa. 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 Hua Yu clapped her hands and smiled. This prediction can be true or false. What's important is that White Moon is not the right bride for the prince, it's the truth of the prophecy. So, White Moon is not fit to be a queen, is it? This explanation was a little far-fetched, but for the frustrated Starwing Knights, it was a powerful cardiotonic. Yes, I'm not opposed to the prince's marriage, but that White Moon is too small. Even if there is any political marriage agreement, they should wait for 3 or 4 years at least. How can a child of this age have a baby? Compared to White Moon, our leader is definitely better. After Hua Yu took the lead, the girls of the Starwing Knights suddenly came alive. On the counter, Xiao Cao had a smile in her eyes, and the frequency of drinking became leisurely. How can I lose to that underage child? Yes, we will fight back. Ling Ling raised her chest with burning flames in her eyes. My Lan sighed. She understood that Hua Yu was not sure of winning, but she just didn't give up. Unlike Lulu, the proud Hua Yu would never let go of her dignity. Even if she loses, she will only stand to death and never kneel in front of the queen. On the battlefield of love, she is also a white gold rose that will never wither. If it was Xiao Cao, she would probably kill all her opponents and then come back to drink, covered in blood. Mew Mew, there is an important task for you. After solving the morale problem of the Starwing Knights, Hua Yu came up with another trump card. Throughout the Starwing Knights, only Mew Mew was at the same age as White Moon. If the prince really has that special hobby, he will definitely love such a lovely Mew Mew. Although Hua Yu never thought that the prince was that kind of person. From the time she saw White Moon, she suspected that there was something wrong with the wedding. The prince's hesitation when she questioned him proved her conjecture. Yeah. Mew Mew raised her hands and looked curiously at the girls around her. Tonight's dream is really interesting. In a huge nest in the Forgotten Ruins. A girl whose body was covered with bandages was reporting the result of the war to the sleeping dragon with her teeth gnashed. Her face looked similar to someone, but her skin was covered with many brown dragon scale. I lost because I was too careless. It was just carelessness. The giant dragon sleeping on numerous treasures was a beautiful emerald dragon. From the horn to the tail, its whole body was bright green. Every scale was covered by crystal green light, which even covered the bright golden color of the treasure hill under its body. A knife-shaped green light floated on the top of the emerald dragon's head and was constantly rotating. Next to the emerald dragon, there were several dragon eggs with different colors, each of which exuded the same huge sense of pressure as the desert dragon. The red dragon egg released an irascible flame breath. The black dragon egg released a poisonous corrosion breath. The blue dragon egg released a cold frozen breath. This was the ultimate source of fear in the entire world, the strongest army on the dragon side in the Dragon's War. That damned prince broke my defense with only one blow. The Starwing Knights didn't follow the rule of single combat and attacked me together. Humans are too outrageous. Zaka transformed into a human form and cried about what she experienced when she ran to the human world, and despised those who didn't obey the rules. The fight between dragons is always one-on-one. It's a shame for dragons to fight in groups. Powerful dragons never need to rely on numbers to fight. They basically crush their enemies all the way. What? Desert Dragon Zaka also summoned desert worms in the battle? They were similar to the parasites on the scales of giant dragons. In Zaka's eyes, they couldn't be counted as help. Ha ha, elder sister, you are too weak. In this way, the Great Mother will cry. You bring disgrace to the name of Zaka. The eggs of different colors laughed at Zaka together. Their names are all Zaka. In the dragon language, it means the shadow of the dragon. They are the descendant of the great emerald dragon, and each of them had the power of different dragon attributes. The firstborn was Desert Dragon Zaka, who has the power of dust. The second was Ice Dragon Zaka, who has not yet come out of the egg and has the power of ice and snow. The third Fire Dragon Zaka has the power of flame. The fourth and the last one was Black Dragon Zaka, who has the dual attributes of darkness and corrosion. They are the four kings of the world, and the stronger they are, the longer they will stay in the egg before being born. Desert Dragon Zaka was the first in birth order, and she had been raging on the mainland for a long time, and she was responsible for most of the bad reputation of dragons. And the second Zaka, Ice Dragon Zaka, was about to be born, therefore, the dragon camp would soon have two real dragons. As for the third, Fire Dragon's birth time was still uncertain, and the fourth dragon, Black Dragon Zaka's birth was far from certain. Even so, human beings had almost been defeated by the evil dragon camp. If not for the Prince Yunshi and the Starwing Knights, this continent would have been the territory of the giant dragon. As the first sister, Desert Dragon Zaka had always been the most enthusiastic about invading the world. Unfortunately, the attack on the capital failed, and she had to flee back to the dragon's nest and be laughed at by her unborn sisters. I didn't lose, it's just a strategic retreat. I can recover from such little wounds after a few days. Then, I will go back and kill them all immediately. As the eldest sister, Desert Dragon Zaka never admitted that she lost and fled. Don't explain, sister, that's all right. I'll break my shell and replace you as the strongest of the four heavenly kings. Without Little Red and Little Black, I can solve the problem alone. The dragon egg, the second Zaka, the incarnation of ice and snow, sent out a sharp declaration of war. Human beings are not worthy to be the opponents of dragons. This world belongs to us dragons. Even the proud queen has become the gatekeeper of our dragon family now. Only us dragons can rule the world. As the Zaka bred by the original giant dragon, she had strong confidence and ability. Compared with Desert Dragon Zaka, as an ice dragon, she had a more terrible control ability. Her ice field can completely turn the world into a world of ice and snow. All the creatures entering this field will be frozen. It seemed that the original giant dragon, the The Emerald Dragon was very satisfied with the announcement of Ice Dragon Zaka. The knife-shaped green light hanging on the Emerald Dragon's head fell down and touched the blue dragon egg. That was the grace and blessing from the original giant dragon. Whoa, my elder sister's dignity. Desert Dragon Zaka drew a circle on the ground with an aggrieved look. I'm the first Zaka. I'm the one who attacked human cities and let them understand the stateliness of the dragon race. Why was she born the earliest, thus becoming the weaker one? She was clearly the elder sister, but she was destined to be outdone by her younger sisters. How could it be? It's not fair. It's all the fault of that damn prince. My injury will be cured in about 2 days. Then I will go to the city again and kill everyone in the city. Anyway, human beings are just insects. They all should die. In the palace, the young queen of Assyria looked curiously at the female officials around her. What do they want to do? Why does everyone look at her pitifully and sympathetically, but dare not say anything? I'm so happy. Why do you look at me with such an expression? This body can move freely, enjoying the warm sunshine and fresh color. She was not even willing to sleep, she just wanted to look at the world more times. Cough. Princess. Princess White Moon. The head of the female officials looked at the little princess who did not know what fate she would have. There are some things we can't do without telling her. There are some fates that she has to bear. Even at the age of 12, as the protagonist of the wedding after 3 days, those things are inevitable. Well, the prince asked me to come to class. What class is it? The queen looked at the officials with innocent eyes. I don't know what class it is, but I was asked by everyone. Yun Shi. Yes, the class for the common sense of the wedding night. The female official's expression was complex, but she had to fulfill her mission. This mission had never been fulfilled by the female officials of all kings, because they had no chance to contact the mysterious queen at all. Only in this generation, they had to teach the 12-year-old Princess White Moon about things that would never be taught in textbooks. About the responsibilities of the queen on the wedding night. Of course, the 12-year-old Queen of Assyria didn't know anything about the knowledge of the wedding night. For her, the wedding was to put on the wedding dress, and to visit the scene of the city in public. No king dared to ask the great and holy queen to do anything on the wedding night. For them, this wedding was essentially a ceremony for them to swear their allegiance to the queen. Moreover, due to the poor quality of the puppets made by the kings, the time for the queen to stay in the city was always very little. She could barely stay until the wedding night. A few kings would be honored to accompany the curious queen for a walk, which was worthy of their lifetime glory. Therefore, as the young queen, she had no idea what the bride really needed to do during the wedding night. After all, kings had no right to spend the night with the queen. It's just that this time, it's different. White Moon made by Yun, she not only had minimal magic consumption, but also could be used freely without any restrictions. Therefore, for the first time, the queen stepped out of the secluded underground lake and appeared in the sunshine world in a complete manner. The world was so beautiful and full of new things for the young queen of Assyria. She doesn't have to hide her identity and play a silent, mysterious bride this time. Laugh if she wants to, run if she wants to. She can talk to all people naturally and touch everything in the palace at will. Everyone was smiling at her and welcoming her. This is living. Even if it had only lasted less than a day, the queen had felt that she was unable to leave such a beautiful world. The thousands of years in the underground lake were like a dream in the darkness. She likes the world. She wants to stay in the world. Talk with everyone, laugh heartily, even crying is more happiness than that being lonely for a long time. Well, including this wedding night, she was also very interested. What is this wedding night? She looked at the embarrassed female official with curious and expectant eyes. Ah, it's true. The female official realized that the Queen of Assyria was nothing but a piece of white paper on this, so she sighed. Indeed, a 12-year-old child is a little princess who should be chasing butterflies in the sunshine. It's a pity that she needed to take responsibility as the queen of the kingdom. But this is the royal family, and this is politics. Now that the king had decided to marry the unknown Princess White Moon, then she must accept all this. And she would also fulfill her responsibility to teach all the things that are not taught in the textbooks to this innocent princess. Oh, poor kid, she is still so young, but she has to bear the responsibility that she shouldn't bear at this age. Miu Miu has come to attend the wedding night course. Just as the female official hesitated on both sides of the balance of morality and responsibility, Miu Miu came running and looked at the young queen excitedly. You are. The female official looked at Miu Miu, who was even a little younger than the queen, in amazement. Her common sense was breaking. Who are you? Asked me to come. I'll take this course with White Moon. With an innocent expression, Miu Miu said happily. Although, her task was just to see what White Moon is doing and to stay with her. Miu Miu presumed that she would be White Moon's little partner and act with her these days. The leader of Starwing Knights. Who are you? The female official looked at Miu Miu with a complicated look. Did you choose this girl to be a dowry for Princess White Moon? In fact, this is also one of the wedding customs of nobles. The maids who accompanied the aristocratic girls to marry into their husbands' families are actually the same as married together. During the period of the mistress's discomfort or pregnancy, these maids will be responsible for the task of serving the mistress' husband. No matter how they are treated, they will never complain. Their origins are mostly the daughters of the lower nobility, or the poor civilians who have to sell their daughters to the nobility. It's strange that all the queens had never had such a dowry, which puzzled many people. These mysterious queens always appeared and disappeared suddenly. Because of this, the female officials of the royal family never had the chance to do their duties. Until this generation, she will finally fulfill her responsibilities for the first time as the first female official in history. Hello, I'm White Moon. The Queen of Assyria looked at Miu Miu, who was smaller than herself. There were almost no children in the whole palace. This was the first time she had met a young partner of her own age. I'm Miu Miu, a knight of the Starwing Knights. Miu Miu looked curiously at the queen, who was a little older than herself. Is she the queen who will marry the prince? She looks lovely. And somehow, there's a kind of smell, which makes her feel very kind and makes her like it very much. I want to lick it. That was what Miu Miu thought and did. With her small fragrant tongue stretched out, Miu Miu kissed the queen's snow-white cheek and bit her ear, and indulged in the softness of her long black hair. Well, that's true. It's a great feeling. Aha, the Queen of Assyria looked at Miu Miu in confusion and didn't know what to do at this time. But it's not a nasty feeling. Just as Miu Miu had some natural intimacy with the queen also had a strange intimacy with Miu Miu, and didn't resist her intimacy at all. Cough. This course has not yet reached this stage. Looking at the two little girls who were already intimate and full of charming atmosphere, the female official coughed. Even if it is not taught in the textbook, it is also necessary to follow the basic rules. It is not good to start from this stage. Little sister, where are you from? It's so delicious. Miu Miu was intoxicated with the queen's fragrance, more precisely, White Moon's fragrance. It was mixed with the fragrance of moonlight branches, just like the fragrance of moonlight wine. It was White Moon's special charm. Especially for Miu Miu, just absorbing some elements from White Moon's body would make her blush. Your taste is also very good. It was rare that not only the queen, but also the White Moon who had just been born had an extraordinary liking for Miu Miu. It seems that in some parts, they have surprisingly similar characteristics. Who are you? Says Miu Miu is going to be with White Moon. Miu Miu completely forgot that Who are you told her to keep it a secret. Well, let's come to listen to the course together. Let's study. What is the wedding night? The black-haired girl and the silver-haired girl held each other's hands, looking at the female official who would teach this course. Your Majesty, I understand your difficulties, but it's really too. The female official tried to control her emotions and began to perform her responsibility helplessly. First of all, Princess White Moon and Miu Miu, you are both going to marry the prince, so the wedding night is an important moment you have to go through. White Moon nodded. I see. That's why I had to study for the wedding night course. Prince. Isn't he? Miu Miu listened to the female official's guidance with full interest. Her two little feet were twinkling and rippling in a lovely arc. As the female official spoke, the content of the course gradually moved towards the realm of adults, and the two little girls' reactions were also quite different. Yeah. Really, do we have to do that? How could it be? That prince and I. White Moon looked at the female official foolishly and her mouth opened wider and wider. Not only she, but also another child who eavesdropped on the course had a huge impact on her world outlook. I see. That's what the so-called wedding night is about. No, absolutely not. How can I bear it? Dad is mine. I'll never give him to anyone. The mating ceremony of human beings is so complicated. Miu Miu's eyes were full of confusion. There was a difference between the common sense of the dragon race and that of the human race. Isn't that how Mom and Dad give birth to her? Puff, that's all for today's course. After teaching the most basic knowledge of the wedding night, the female official felt very tired. It turns out that it's full of guilt to teach this knowledge to children who don't know anything. Originally, the daughters of nobility would be imparted this knowledge only when they were about 16 years old and began to choose engagement partners. She didn't expect that in this generation, the queen would be such a little girl. Your Majesty, though it is a great sin of disrespect, I still want to say. Well, is that so? Miu Miu's curiosity and action power were much stronger than those of the female official who was full of thoughts at this moment. Only after learning the first lesson, she began to practice. Target, the shy little sister. Put out one hand. Miu Miu pressed the queen's hands and gently separate her feet. Well, Miu Miu is a good kid who studies hard. It seems, this posture is not right. The Queen of Assyria shook her head. She held Miu Miu's white face and kissed her. Woo, well, two smooth and delicious tongues intertwined with each other. Silver thread falling from the two little girls' lips and tongues, showing the color of tempting crime. White Moon is also a good child who loves to study. Cough. Yes, that's probably how it feels. The details are not so important. It's important to make the partner feel comfortable. In other words, posture doesn't matter. It's about whether the other side is satisfied. The queen extended her little feet, and her toes touched Miu Miu's chest. She remembered that when she stepped on the prince's body with her feet, he seemed to show a very comfortable expression. In this way, I should be able to add points to the wedding night course. Little sister, your feet are beautiful. Miu Miu grasped the white and tender feet, gently rubbing the bent arch, smoothing her instep, and then naughtily opened the 10 toes. Ah! There, the queen's face was flushed with shyness, and the feeling of crispness and numbness swept her whole body. With a smile, Miu Miu gently bit the queen's sensitive toes, then stretched out his little tongue and licked the soft feet. From the sole of the foot to the instep, from the arch of the foot to the lower leg, Miu Miu had practiced the courses she learned one by one. The rhythm of kissing, the timing of sipping, the posture and reaction of being a bride. What an interesting dream. Whoa! Miu Miu, you bully me. The queen's petite body was shaking constantly, and there was a hazy color in her eyes. It turns out that this is what we need to learn on our wedding night. On the wedding night, am I going to do something like this with the prince? From the tip of the foot to the cheek, all should be licked like this, and further. Oh, it's so embarrassing. On the other hand, someone who doesn't know what it means to hide her emotions. Yes, I'm saying you, Ling Ling. Prince, don't marry that White Moon. Resting on Yun Shi's shoulder, Ling Ling acted coquettishly. Mai Lan almost made a mistake in writing the crucial judgment when she heard Ling Ling's voice. Ling Ling, what a fool you are. Didn't we decide to come to test the king's true heart? What kind of test is this? Sure enough, she is just a hopeless fool. In fact, his hesitation undoubtedly increased Ling Ling's arrogance and gave her confidence to advance. I am the closest to you, my prince. Ling Ling began to play cute again. I took a bath with you and slept with you. Even our leader didn't do these things with you. Oh, why did she remember that? He didn't expect she would. What? Have they done these things? This was Mai Lan's thought. She had a heartbreak. Oh, it's true. Yun Shi recalled all kinds of games they had played, such as doctors and patients or card games, which had the rule that the loser must take off a piece of clothing. By the way, as long as it's a duel, The stupid Ling Ling had never won against the prince once, so she was always played with by him by various means. Hey, where does this memory come from? The setting of this world is too bad. He was surprised by the memory about the prince of this trial world generated by the stars. I know it. My Lan's small hand was shaking, but even with such a sad expression, she still insisted on her duty. As a secretary, if I can't finish my job, I'm not qualified to stay with the present prince and the future king. Even if the kingdom is destroyed and the king is betrayed, she will stay with him and deal with his affairs for him faithfully. This is the road she chose. No matter what road the king took, she would accompany him and advance with him. The secretary is the king's pen, which is used to announce the king's will. No matter what the king is, she will be loyal to him, which is the way of the secretary's love. Prince, with a sweet voice, Ling Ling launched an attack on him, regardless of my Lan's presence. No. No. Yunshi's resistance was just as powerless as the little white rabbit facing the big grey wolf. Every shaking of Ling Ling breasts made his face blush and his heart thump. Every breath of Ling Ling would speed up his breathing. Ah, what a little succubus that can't be rejected. With such a secretary, how can I be a gentleman? Whoa. Oh. The prince is bullying me. Ling Ling's tears announced his defeat. In addition to my Lan's glances from time to time, Yunshi felt that he was about to commit a crime. Who is bullying whom in the end? He issued a silent cry and finally raised his hand to surrender. I'm sorry. It's impossible not to get married. This is the tradition of the royal family. It's not just a tradition, it's a ritual passed down from generation to generation, and it's a pledge made by the Queen of Assyria. Then after marriage, will the Queen still be here? Ling Ling, biting Yunshi's ear, asked the crucial question for the Starwing Knights. That's it. My Lan's ears popped up in an instant. The answer to this question is very important. It was not only for the Starwing Knights, but also for the whole kingdom. In a word, Yunshi's answer would determine the fate of the whole Starwing Knights, even the whole kingdom. According to the historical records, the queen would only appear on the wedding day, and then disappear without a trace. Only this time, this tradition was broken. Before the wedding day, the queen appeared in the palace. What's more, it's a 12-year-old girl with a recognizable name, White Moon. For the Starwing Knights, it was a huge blow. For the Guardian Kingdom, this was also a big enough of an event to affect the whole kingdom. If the queen is no longer a symbol but a living human, there are too many things that will be involved. She probably won't stay, Yunshi hesitated and answered. According to his calculation, the young queen of Assyria's true body probably can't leave the underground lake. In the past 1,000 years, all the kings had proved this. This time, after completing the wedding ceremony, Her Majesty should return to the quiet underground lake as usual. At least, from Yunshi's common sense, it's the most reasonable answer. Well, he just forgot to think about how unreasonable his white moon he created was. Yeah, great. Ling Ling smiled, licked his ear with her little tongue, and then kissed his cheek heavily. Sure enough, the prince is the best. Well, everything is still on track. My Lan held her glasses and smiled happily. Why she was so happy? Yunshi didn't understand Ling Ling's idea at all. Prince, I love you the most. Ling Ling hummed a ditty and beat his shoulder with her chest and hands at the same time, which made his shoulders relax. After hammering for a while, Ling Ling suddenly blushed and asked Yunshi quietly, Prince, do you want to drink milk? Milk? Yunshi swallowed a mouthful of saliva subconsciously, and the taste buds seemed to recall some very sweet taste. In that vague memory, it's very delicious special milk. Even he couldn't drink it often. Only Ling Ling knew where to find and deliver it. Well, I'm just a little hungry. Then, I'm going to prepare it. My Lan, come and help me. Ling Ling answered and her cheeks suddenly turned red and her breathing became very fast. Ah, that regular one. Yunshi doubted if it was his delusion, but My Lan's eyes were full of jealousy when she looked at Ling Ling. Well, the regular one. Ling Ling took My Lan's hand and left his study. Puff, thank God, I have a hard-working secretary. Looking at the small pile of documents that My Lan had processed, Yunshi was relieved. If he had dealt with it himself, it would probably take him 3 days and nights. Just thinking about the complicated relationships among nobles, the expenses, the state's inventory and so on, would have made his brain hurt. It's amazing that my Lan can handle so many complicated things in order. By comparison, Ling Ling, well, her shoulder massages seems to have improved again. In the secretary's room not far from the study, My Lan and Ling Ling were having a routine secret ceremony. My Lan, you're so good. I'm dizzy when I read those documents. Ling Ling took a big sip of milk and looked at My Lan, who also drank milk with jealousy. There is nothing to envy about the ability to deal with government affairs. My Lan sipped her milk with papaya, which was a recipe known to the Starwing Knights. As long as we have enough exercise to master the aristocratic relationship, the business circle of local businessmen and any conflict of interests, anyone can do similar things. The post of secretary has never been irreplaceable, but there are some things that only you can do, Ling Ling, such as this. After drinking her papaya milk, My Lan looked at the fuller peaks of Ling Ling, and her eyes seemed to be burning. Coo, coo, goo. After drinking 10 boxes of milk, Ling Ling stretched out her tongue and licked the white liquid on her lips. Then she breathed deeply. Ha. Well, this was not the dragon breath of the martial artist, but the preparation before using a special ability. The milk she drank was different from My Lan's. It was the only magic medicine specially prepared for her by Lulu, the only pharmacist of the Starwing Knights. It contains a variety of materials, among which several valuable herbs, and have some special effects. As for the effect, well, it's a little secret between them. It seems, coming out. Holding the huge and plump peaks on her chest, Ling Ling blushed. Sure enough, no matter how many times I try, I'm still not used to it. In the same way, no matter how many times she had seen it, My Lan couldn't help envying. Why only Ling Ling has such a milk-secreting physique? Even after drinking Lulu's secret medicine, in all the Starwing Knights, it can only be done by Ling Ling. Sure enough, is it the difference between the size of the breasts? Ling Ling's talent in this realm is amazing. Visually, after drinking the miraculous medicine made by Lulu, there was a trend of the continued development of her breast. How envious this was. Stupid Ling Ling. Even so, My Lan, as a good friend of Ling Ling, stretched out her hands and began to take off Ling Ling's coat to expose the soft and smooth pair of white rabbits. Pinch. Knead. Squeeze. Press. After a series of skilled techniques, the fragrant milk named Ling Ling's specialty was born. After drinking about 10 boxes of milk mixed with Lulu's secret medicine, it was finally condensed into a small glass of snow-white and sweet milk, giving off a kind of intoxicating taste. This is the talent of Ling Ling, and only Ling Ling can do this miracle. Every time My Lan helps Ling Ling to squeeze out this special product, My Lan feels that her personal outlook and world outlook have been greatly hit. Today's quality is very good. Ling Ling stretched out her little tongue, and licked the milk and looked satisfied. This must be because the milk is full of her love for the prince. She can imagine the happy voice of the prince after drinking this special milk. Good taste. After drinking, Yunshi emitted a happy voice from his throat. Ling Ling's milk was sweeter and more delicious than that in his memory, with a little warmth. It was just like the milk was just squeezed out. Well, as a prince, there are still some enviable privileges. In his memory, only Ling Ling knew where to find this kind of milk. He always thought it was strange that there was no cow in the palace. Where is the fresh and delicious milk produced? He had asked Ling Ling several times, but she always avoided answering and her face blushed like a ripe apple. Well, that's probably the girl's secret, but the milk is good to drink. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.